Welcome to the Scale Model Podcast. In this podcast, we aim to entertain, inform, and promote the hobby of scale model kit building with interviews, reviews, and news about the hobby. The Scale Model Podcast is recorded bi-weekly and is available where your favorite podcasts are found, including iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher, as well as on our website at scalemodelpodcast.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving a review. It does help to get our shows out to more modelers. We also publish extra video content and complete episodes on our YouTube channel. Feel free to like and subscribe to the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/scalemodelpodcast. There's also a Patreon page at www.patreon.com/scalemodelpodcast. Your Patreon support helps us cover hosting costs and gives you access to extra content as well as prize giveaways. Welcome to episode 43 of the Scale Model Podcast, sponsored by Goodman Models. I'm your host, Stuart Clark, in my basement's top secret laboratory, and I'm joined via Skype because, we're good people and doing the right social distancing thing by our good friend Anthony Goodman at Goodman Heavy Industries. How are you today, sir?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing, Stu?
Not bad. We were just saying before we went to air, we could hear the transport trucks and that, on the loading docks right above you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
They're
loading
running
up
right over my head.
running right over your head. No, it's your kids being good. They're playing with their cars, and that's fine. So, yes, I had my cats down here wanting their supper earlier, but, so how are you coping with all this social distancing and stuff?
Oh, not too bad. We're staying close to home. I'm going back to work this week, so we'll see how that goes. And all we can do is just try and take some extra precautions. And I've been getting tons of bench time in, though.
That's good.
I'm watching a lot of TV.
Yep, everyone has, I think. And it's, I haven't been off work. I'm working for the local hospitals in their IT side. So we've been doing a lot of work. We've been doing a lot of work getting equipment ready for screening clinics and things like that. But, even then we have to be aware of things. We've held off some upgrades because some of the areas we were supposed to upgrade, now they're saying we have to be fully gowned and masked, and we can hold off for a while. So we're not going to bother.
So, it's the thing to do.
Exactly. So let's get right on to the show. First of all, we should give a good shout out to our friends at On the Bench and down at Scale Model Mojo. Dave and the boys, I guess Julian had a COVID scare, but he's fine, or as fine as Julian can be, right?
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood, but they're talking about, going to a weekly. And so is our friends down south. Must be nice to have all that time. No, I'm kidding.
Excellent.
No, it'll be good. More content. It'll keep people busy. And in that spirit, my modeling beverage tonight, in the spirit from Dave and Mike, is a nice glass of Diet Coke. I think it's vintage March or February. It's got a very good nose on it. How about you?
I'm just drinking coffee like usual.
There you go. So
that's my drink of choice.
Okay, so as always, we always want to thank our Patreon supporters, and we did announce we had a prize pack giveaway from Sean's Custom Model Tools.
Yeah, it's a nice prize pack.
Awesome.
Some really good stuff in it.
Yeah, I've got it right here beside me. And we will hand sanitize it before we ship it out. Not to worry, but we're both safe. We're going to this consists of the sprue holder. One of the Goodman's super sanding block holders in a nice color of green, and an official Tamiya glue stand for your glue stand bottles. Awesome prize pack.
Yeah.
So what I did was just before we went to air, in cooperation with several major accounting firms supervising. No, not really. You'll have to trust me. I pulled up the list of the Patreons. Got the total, ran it through random.org, and our number this week was number 6, which means Gordon Sorensen. You are our winner.
All right, Gordon.
Yep, congratulations, Gordon. I'll be reaching out to you via an email with your address, etc., and we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. And all we ask is when you get it, make sure you shoot a picture of it and either your bench or yourself. So that's going to be absolutely awesome. Okay, moving on. Latest news. So right now, latest news seems to be mostly model shows being delayed and things like that.
Yeah.
So what have we got?
Well, NorEastCon 49, which was coming up in May, has been canceled, but also rescheduled, which is awesome news. So the new dates are October 2nd and 3rd, 2020, and that's in Batavia, New York. I'm actually going to that one. I was looking
Yeah.
forward to that, and I think it's the right call. So good on you guys for sorting that out. It was I went to that show. That's the IPMS regional for Region 1. And I
Right.
went to that show in 2017. Great show. Had an awesome time. So I'm looking forward to it again. Well,
Awesome.
it
Now,
gives me. Oops, sorry.
sorry, I was going to say, are you going just as a regular Joe, or are you going to be vending or anything like that?
No, I'll be vending. Yep.
Awesome.
I'll be vending at that event. It's an awesome show. I had a great time, and I was just gonna say I have time to actually build up some stock, a
Right.
couple extra
Yeah, that'll
months.
be good. What we'll try and do is we'll try and reach out to the organizers too, and we'll see if we can get them on just before
Yes.
the show, and we'll try and build some excitement about it. Also, Mecha Showdown 2020 has been postponed. The date
Yeah.
is to be TBA,
Yep.
and that's similar to just like our friends at HeritageCon, because actually we would have been at HeritageCon this weekend,
Yeah, that's
today
right.
actually.
Yeah.
So again, they're hoping to get a revised date as well. So
Yes.
that's all we can do is we have to play it safe and stuff
Yep.
like that. I'm sure we're going to hear a few more of these as the month goes on. It's going to be a few more
Yeah.
months. Let's be realistic.
Yeah. I think we're all
Um,
really heading into the critical time for this whole pandemic,
yep,
right? So just gotta
yep,
be patient.
yep. Got to be
It'll all come
patient.
back after.
Exactly. But as you say, everyone's builds are getting along. There's no excuses anymore.
That's right. That's right. I know
Definitely.
I've been getting tons of work done right now. Just awesome.
Perfect. Good. Well, we're going to cover that off a bit later as well. Okay, on to the mailbag. Our last Super Sanding single giveaway winner was Chad Salami,
Yep.
and I think he took a 320 grid, I believe, if I recall.
Yes, that's right.
I'm
Yep.
pretty sure, yeah. So anyway, he sent us a nice picture, and we'll have it in the show notes at scalemodelpodcast.com. And he writes, "Hi, Stuart and Anthony. I have attached the picture of a super sanding single you guys have sent. I received it on Friday. It was perfect timing because he started a 135th Hind build today and put it to good use. It's amazing, and I'll be buying the set shortly. Thanks again. I love the podcast. Thanks, Chad. That Hind's going to be nice. That's going to be a beast of a kit."
Yeah, that's a good size for a hind, eh?
Yeah.
'Cause that's kind of a
Yeah.
big helicopter to begin with.
Begin with, exactly. So again, thank you, Chad. Much obliged for sending the picture, and we hope you enjoy it, both the sanding block, the podcast, and this Hind kit. I want to see some pictures of that too. Feel free to post it on
Yeah,
our Facebook page as you go.
absolutely.
Okay, moving right along, some hobby announcements. This is going to be some big news for particularly North American modelers. We've been hearing rumors about this for a while. There was some
Yep.
false news last year, but it's
Yeah.
basically official now. Someone asked on the testers Facebook page because their local store had told them they are definitely discontinuing Model Master. Now, last year, they were discontinuing it overseas, but this was a US-based one. So testers did reply, and this is from the official account. They
Yep.
put a link up, but they basically said, and I quote, "As a manufacturer of paint products, we have a long history of producing hobby kits and supplies. To that end, we are evolving our strategy to focus more keenly on testers, our flagship brand, and are discontinuing our Pactra, Aztec, and Model Master brands as the demand for these products continue to decline. We will continue to support the hobby market with a robust line of aerosols, brush paint, tools, and accessories, and always looking for opportunities to innovate in these categories. Please keep in mind that we do have limited quantities available, and hobby shops will have access to that inventory." End
Well,
quote.
that's very interesting because that doesn't say that they're, exiting the industry altogether. It says
No,
they're
they're just
sounds like
they're
they're
just
merging some
focusing their
stuff.
brand, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, I didn't even know Pactra was still being produced.
That's
Uh,
like an art. That's like a craft paint, I think, right?
Pactra, no, Pactra was like an old model railway paint and RC paint. It's ages old.
Really?
Like if you ask your dad on the model, he'll probably know what that stuff
Oh,
is.
I'll tell you, my dad was really hard into Flow Quill. That was like
Quill, yeah,
the
yeah,
golden
similar
elixir
thing.
that he couldn't get anymore. That
Yeah,
he's got these like a few of these bottles he's had
yep.
since 1969 that he covets, and
And he hangs
it's
on
like
to them. Yep.
can't find that exact
Well,
shade.
you know what? I think you're going to be seeing runs on the Model
Yeah.
Master and some of the Pactor because you know what? Model Masters, they even did a line of acrylics which weren't bad. And they were a fairly good paint considering they came from testers. But again, we've talked about it before. It just seems like in some ways, there's so much more different brands coming out,
Yes.
and the company, it just hasn't evolved, shall we say. I have reached out to testers to try and get more information. I haven't heard anything
Uh-huh.
yet, but I know there's a lot of people that are very passionate about these paints, and there'll be a lot of there already was in
Yeah.
that Facebook group. To
Sure.
those people, I can basically say, it happens. A little bit later on, I'll be talking about the Aqueous paints,
Yeah.
kind of a similar thing. So if you really love them, get them while you can. But at the
Stock
same
up.
time,
They last for a long time.
yeah. At the same time, look at some of the other brands that are out there now.
Oh, for
There's some
sure.
very good product out there now,
Yeah. It's really
which
loaded.
which have similar range, stuff like that. It's worth trying. Unfortunately, we're not going to prevent them from doing this, but definitely, yeah. So there's your notice. If you do want to stock up on those one, again, I have a few. I had a couple of the acrylics. I never used the regular Model Masters a lot because they were more the oil based,
I think they
which
were
I did.
enamels. If
They
I,
were the enamels, which I didn't
yeah,
like to use.
I
But
had hundreds of those
yeah, well, they
stupid
do. They
paints.
had some very good. They did make some acrylics too. They were white label,
Yeah.
and I had some of
Okay.
those, and those were great.
Yeah.
But
They had
I never.
a lot of colors in
Huge,
their
huge
catalog.
range, huge
Yeah.
range in the catalogs, which people really loved. And this
Yeah.
is what people are gonna, because if they go back just to their testers brand, very small range of colors.
Right.
But again, I tell people there is other companies making other things now. We've talked about Tamiya, we've talked about the AK, the MiGs that is available in North America.
Yeah.
Tamiya consistently expands. They've got their new lacquer range. Mr. Hobby, they're starting to,
Yeah.
they've got
Mr. Cutler.
theirs. Plus the
Love that
Aqueous is,
stuff.
is coming out. Yeah. So, try and keep an open mind. I know it's disappointing, but try and keep an open mind.
Yeah.
I guess this also means they won't be making, I don't even know if they have been in a while. You remember those Aztec airbrushes? They were
I
like
do.
plastic and they had
I
like
think
different
they're
plastic heads or something.
just meant to be like budget, like entry level, right? Like get a feel
Hmm.
for it, and then if you know it's something you want to do, you stick with it. But
Well, that's the impression I got, but like
I never saw one up
they
close.
were very different because they were plastic based. But the
Yeah.
idea was they didn't really have, I don't know if it wasn't needles, but you changed the heads for different needle thicknesses. It was
Okay.
very easy to do. But again, yeah, a lot of people, they were very much a beginner. And because they were plastic, I think there was issues if you let the paint dry or whatever. I just remember them because they had a deluxe set that was in like a nice little wooden box. It looked really, the
Okay.
presentation was very classy.
My
Uh,
first airbrush was a uh, Badger, and that was
yeah,
like a
same
deep
here.
that that's a classic, and
Yep.
um, that those Aztec ones certainly never appealed to me, and it wasn't that much of a jump to go from like when I was starting out to
Hmm.
just get $120 or something together to
Yeah.
get that Badger. I forget
Yeah,
what it was called.
exactly.
Had the three
Yeah.
needles, blue body.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
and
So
it was
yeah, I
it was a
was the
fine
same
brush.
thing because
Yeah.
I got an airbrush before these came out. Now I just was looking. We were talking. Yeah, Pactor was their RC car
Yes.
lacquer.
Yeah. Looks
That's
like
as
it's
it was rebranded as that. But I remember years ago they were like the Flow Quill. They had quite a few other things. But yeah, so
bottle paints, brush paints.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So these are RC cal lacquers for polycarbonate RC car bodies.
Okay.
So they're getting out of that as well. So and
Uh,
again, if you don't move with the times sometimes, I think this is what's happened. So testers is hopefully we'll see them coming out with some newer stuff, but they're definitely, if you look at their website and that, they're definitely focusing on the general craft market.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something to
For
keep
sure.
in
That's
mind.
probably a huge. That's probably a huge industry all on its own, and it's probably I would surmise it's bigger than
They're
scale
probably
model
deciding,
world.
yeah, and they're
Yeah.
probably deciding at this point because they haven't really kept up, and there's so much competition out there.
Yeah. Yep.
If you look at if it, you basically look at their Facebook page, and it's pretty well all the stuff. It's like, you know, it's like looking at a flyer for Michaels or Hobby Lobby with the general craft stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, they got to do what they got to do to stay competitive, I guess.
yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens. And again,
Yeah.
they basically tried to say what they can, and I give them credit for being. I'd like to see a proper news release instead of in a Facebook
Yeah.
page.
Yeah. Facebook
But
posts, it's the best.
but you know what? That's fine. I give them credit for doing that. So okay, onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
Let me go find the right page again. There you go. So, okay, we're going to start off with our friends at the Modeling Moose, Osprey Publishing. They're going to, because of the COVID, everyone's in forced isolation. They're going to give away 4 of their ebooks every week, free of
That's
charge.
cool.
And they have all sorts of different things. They cover all sorts of historical stuff. And, now they said 4, but there's actually 6 on the first week's list. So you've got U.S.
Bonus.
Marines versus Japanese infantrymen, the BF-109 versus the Yak-7, Sasanian elite cavalry ancient stuff, a historical from 80-224 to 642, Blackbeard's last fight, and the Martini heavy rifle. So all
Cool.
sorts of interesting things. So basically, you just have to go to their website, sign up. It's free, and then it looks like you can download. You make yourself a free Osprey account, and you select each of the books. So,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
yeah, it looks like they're all going to be, from what I see here, you have a choice of EPUB or for your Kindle or a PDF. I haven't gone to the actual site yet, but that looks like what it could be. So anyway, the link we have is a full instructions on how to do that, and then you can download it. So that's nice of Osprey. I have a few of their books. They're excellent reference works.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been around for a long time doing that stuff,
Yep.
right?
Exactly. Okay, ammo. MiG ammo. First of all, I saw a notice that they're having to shut down their online store this weekend because Spain's pretty well shutting down the country.
Yeah.
So if you order stuff through MiG, they're not going to be able to ship it out to you till early April. But the other thing is they're also distributing a new company's kits, a company called War Slug. Never heard of these guys before, but the first one's going to be a British armored car, one for 35th scale in a full interior. And it's going to be around early June. So, yeah, but again, we don't normally cover the stuff this early, but again, it looks good. Some of the part pictures look very smart. I love armored cars. We used World War I once. Looks like this is the Rolls Royce one. Yeah, this is the Rolls Royce. A lot of companies are making them right now. So anyway, so they're going to be starting to be a distributor. They're already a huge distributor off their website. You can get ammo, TACOM, Ryefield, Model Collect, Great Wall. They even do Bandai through their store, Dora Wings, etc. Yeah, they do quite a bit. But anyway, they're doing that. So I thought I'd point that out. New releases from our friends at Tamiya. In addition to all their RC stuff, the 132nd F-51D Mustang from the Korean War. We've talked about that one before. The 148th Russian T-55. They have a M8 Greyhound Combat Patrol set. That's an armored car. A 148th ME-109E3, but in Swiss markings. Because the Swiss bought some and they captured some that they ended up straying over the border. When they land, they kind of acquire them, shall we say? And
I always wondered about Switzerland and how they were able to decide their control. Yeah,
do some reading. It's fascinating reading. It would have been such a disaster for Germany if they tried to invade. It would have been too difficult.
Yeah, I know it's pretty much surrounded by impenetrable mountain ranges.
That and the Swiss did a lot of preparations. I suggest just look up some Wikipedia stuff on that. They had bunkers. They had it was pretty scary.
An advanced army.
Yeah, very advanced, very good. Basically, the idea is they would kind of retreat from the plains and go up in the mountains and just raise hell from there. So it wasn't worth it. And again, they did shoot at both German and American planes if they strayed over. And there was a few cases of some accidental bombings, like American bombers would hit the wrong target. So these guys were struck at very neutral.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I gotta admit, that's one aspect of World War II history that I'm not familiar with at all.
Yeah.
I'd like to know a
Yeah.
bit more about.
There's quite a few resources if you start at Wikipedia.
Yeah,
You can
I
definitely
will.
check that out. What else? 124 Celica Supra Long Beach Grand Prix, the Marshall car, the pace car. I'm just looking that one up. Oh, that's an old one. Wow, 1970, the first Toyota Grand Prix. That's way back.
Yeah.
I was like 3 or 4. A T-34 76 and 135th, 1942 production model in the T-34 85. And then in their tools and paints, um, they're
Ooh,
introducing 2 acrylic minis and 2 lacquers.
nice.
So both the yellow brown from the Africa Corps, the yellow brown and the light brown in
Yes.
both the lacquer and the acrylic lines.
XF
So
92 and 93. That's awesome.
93,
Yeah.
and then the lacquers are catching up, 76 and 77.
Wow.
So that's interesting. Yeah. Now, what's interesting, I wonder if this is a typo. XF93 light brown DAK 1942, but the lacquer list light brown is DAK 1941. I wonder if the first one's a typo
Uh,
on the date because everything
Interesting.
else is
Yeah.
1941.
Yeah.
I'm just going to see if there's anything on the label. No, it doesn't say. It just has the color sample.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So that's always good because I love my Tamiya. Love my Tamiya
It's
paints.
it's a pretty standard workhorse paint, right? That's got
Yep.
good
Well,
availability and
yep, exactly.
yeah.
Okay, moving on. Our friends at Airfix, they got a couple of things in their new arrival on their web shop.
Uh-huh.
They have the M36 tank destroyer and the Jag Panzer Hetzer.
Uh-huh.
These are both 135th. These are both Academy molds. But another brand new mold, which one I know myself and I know a lot of modelers are excited about when this was announced last year. This is the 148th de Havilland DH-82A Tiger Moth.
Oh
This
yeah.
was This was such an important aircraft in British aviation and during the war.
Uh-huh.
This was what most air crews learned how to fly on. So
Okay.
in our area here, around Canada, both at London and other airports, we had the Commonwealth Air Training Plan.
Yep.
This is what these guys flew. Just an absolute,
Interesting.
yep, it was the primary trainer, absolutely beautiful. And there's still a few that basically fly today. It was a very stable and forgiving aircraft, and I like generally supported the odd silly mistake. It was described as an easy airplane to fly, but a difficult one to fly well. So this was
Yeah.
the idea as a primary basic trainer because they were just
Okay.
being, they were having so many people come through the system.
Now,
Uh,
is there a type moth, a real life example of one at the Heritage Warplane Museum?
I'm trying to remember.
Trying to think
Um,
that I feel like there is one there, right? Because I know
I
they
wouldn't be
were.
surprised. I wouldn't be
Wow.
surprised if whether it's actually flying or
Just a static
yeah, but
example.
there is quite a few out there that are still flying.
Yeah.
Quite a
Yeah.
few. It's a
I know I've
very
seen one before at an air show, but I'm not sure if it was
Yeah,
here or not.
there is one. There is one at the Warplane Museum. They
Oh,
have a
cool. Yeah,
DH-82C.
cool.
It's actually under restoration. They're trying to get it back to flying condition.
Oh, wowza.
So,
Cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, very, like I say, very cool little aircraft. And I know there hasn't been a decent kit out for a while, so I know a lot of Canadian aircraft modelers and RAF aircraft modelers will be very interested in this. This is an all-new tool too. So,
Oh, excellent. Oh,
yeah,
it could be a pretty hot kit then.
yeah, I think it's going to be very, very popular.
We'll keep our eye on.
Okay, I was looking up ScaleMates, and there's a bunch of stuff added to ScaleMates database from AMT. Now,
Okay.
AMT per se doesn't have their own website, or if they do, it's pretty lousy. But so I just pulled up what was on the ScaleMate stuff, and like just in the last couple of days, they're introducing a bunch of Coca-Cola themed ones. So you've got a 1960 Coca-Cola Ford Ranchero. It's a little bit like the early version of the El Camino.
Okay.
With Coca-Cola logoing. There's a Chevy Silverado monster truck with
These
the
are just
Coca-Cola.
new decals.
Well,
That's it,
basically
I
change
think.
decals on all these, right? But they're
Yeah.
also re-releasing. They've got a 64 Plymouth Belvedere, a
Yeah.
63 Ford Galaxy, a 66 Chevy, the vintage police car, looks like a Model T, a Coca-Cola transport truck, a GMC General, the snowplow, and a police car, the 1970 Ford Galaxy from one of the James Bond movies way back when. So it looks like, yeah, and change parts. Again, these are all old molds.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it does look like quite a bit that they're coming out with. So I just thought I'd point that out for all the car modelers.
Yeah. I mean, I hopefully some of those kits are still buildable. We are
Oh,
going
yeah,
to do.
absolutely.
We are going to give a little love to the car modeling community soon. I'm working on it.
Yes, he's working on it, boys
I'm
and
working
girls.
on it.
Yeah, no,
But
well, hey,
yeah,
you managed to knock one off, so
yeah, I did.
exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay, Tacom. Tacom's got 4 new releases in 2 different scales for April and May 2020. So you've got some um,
Yeah.
box art. So this is another one of their 1+1 kits in 1/72.
Okay.
This is a Chieftain Mark 11 and FE 432 Mark II. Um, so the Chieftain was actually previous released, but the FE 432 is like an armored personnel carrier.
Yeah.
It entered service in '63, and over 3,000 were produced.
Looks a
Uh,
lot like the M113 kind of platform.
Basic, same idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Its key role was a battle taxi, but it could be turned to an ambulance, a command
Sure.
post, or a mortar carrier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but these are both in 72nd scale. And of course, we've talked about the Chieftain before.
Yes.
So let's move on. 1/35th scale, the Merkava 2D, the Israeli Defense Forces main battle tank.
Uh-huh.
This was introduced in general service in 1983. It was basically an improvement from the Mark I as a result of combat experience from Lebanon. It
Wow.
was optimized for urban warfare and low intensity conflicts. Came with multiple composite armor on the chassis and turn, allowing rapid replacement. Because, it's things like RPGs and that you got to worry about where you're going.
Yeah.
You want to be able to pop that composite armor off back at base and away you go again. And then we have a 1/35th scale of the M60 Patton main battle tank. So this was built from 15,000 were built by Chrysler at the Detroit Arsenal tank plant from 61 to 87. So it didn't really serve a lot in Vietnam, but Israeli served versions of it fought in the 73 and 82 wars.
Yeah.
But the Marines did use it in Grenada and Beirut. And also the Iranians bought some way back when, so they were still using them in the Iran-Iraq war.
Wow.
Apparently, and these were also in Desert Storm. So Marine M60s fought against Soviet-built Iraqi tanks, destroying over 100 with the loss of only one.
Wow.
And
it's a pretty good track record.
Yeah, it was retired by the U.S. in the mid-90s. Some foreign armies continue to use it. So again, looks like a popular one. Then they're coming out with a Stug 3 in 1/35th, an early version. Again, another popular German support vehicle.
Yeah.
So again, not really, much I know about it, but basically yet another version of that. So this is early versions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they say this will be available in April or May from their normal suppliers. Okay, coming up from Dragon for April. Remember before how I've complained about a lot of these companies produce, they do the updates on Facebook or they send an email, but their websites are always months behind.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say Dragon's one of them. So I get usually a weekly email from Dragon telling you all the new things are going to come out. And they're usually a couple of months ahead, actually.
Yeah.
So, for example, I just got one the other day from June, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if I go back to their website, the last news items are from February.
Yeah.
So it's kind of annoying. So
maybe
anyway,
they're slowed down because of the pandemic.
No, I think they're just not updating their news items, because if you go to the right side, you'll see new arrivals. And they'll show all the new arrivals like for June or whatever. But we're going to focus on April here. Yeah. So the first one is the 1 to 1/44th Carl Mortar Railway Transport Carrier. So this was basically what carried this giant mortar.
Yeah.
So was that
the Carl Morser? Is that what it's called?
The Morser Carl. Yeah, it's a siege mortar.
Yes.
So this one, it weighed 124 tons. Meant it had to be transported around on a special two-piece set of rail cars for long-distance travel. So yeah, this basically includes the car. And so you could basically do that. They also have the mortar, which they're also releasing at the same time in 1/144th. And this is,
so you have to buy the car and then the gun?
The rail car is separate from the mortar because the mortar had tracks. You could, this thing could drive down a road very slowly. But if you wanted to transport it long distances, you threw it on.
It had to be by rail. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For anything long distance. I actually have do I have a 70-second version of this? I think I have a 70-second version of this.
That'd be a big kit.
No? Yeah, it's going to be a big kit. So this is it's an unassembled kit. You can this is part of their mini armor series. So smaller stuff. So the idea is it can be easily put together again for wargaming. So yeah, they've introduced that. And then 1/72nd scale. Look, another Tiger tank. This is the early Tiger 1 that served in Tunisia in 43. Again, if it's Dragon, you know there's going to be a lot of detail behind it in that tiny scale. So get your magnifying glass out. And then also they've got a 1/72nd scale PL ZBL-09 infantry fighting vehicle in the digital camouflage. So this is their version of the LAV. So it's a eight-wheeled thing armed with a 30-millimeter cannon, coaxial machine gun. You can also have missiles on this thing. So yeah, all sorts of different things. So yeah. So it looks kind of cool as well. Again, there's a lot of people. This is part of their armor collectible series. So there's all sorts of different slight variations, and you don't know what it is necessarily. It's like like you get like your not hockey cards, magic cards or whatever.
Okay.
It's that sort of idea. There's some slight, and these ones are actually pre-assembled, but you can paint them the way you want. So really good for the gaming crowd. So normally when you'll see them normally at the counter of your hobby shop in like a box, and you'll just pick a box and away you go.
Yep. Yeah. There's lots of stuff like that. Certainly in the the collectible toy kind of world too, where
exactly. So yeah, you're probably familiar with that as well. So yeah, that's what's coming new from Dragon. Let's move on here as we, there may be a coronavirus going on, but there's no shortage of product.
Yeah.
Okay, our good friends at Mini Art. Once again, with various things. Yes, I love what our friends at the Modeling News. They're whoever writes their titles are really good. Mini Art wants us to get pumped with their new pallet jack truck set. So this is in 1/35th. This is a pallet jack with pallets and barrels to cart around. So it looks like it includes includes like giant pickle barrels or something.
Yeah, those are just those are 50-gallon drums, like just modern ones, right?
Right.
The blue one anyway.
Yep.
And then that's neat. I like that.
Exactly.
I use one of those on occasion.
Oh yeah, no, we use them at work all the time. So all sorts of different things. I love the picture they post. Someone's obviously had experience. Can easily run over a human foot. Can't roll over a zip tie. It's true. You got a little bump on the floor, and these things have trouble getting over because they're solid metal wheels. So you basically looks like you get 2 hand pallet trucks, 4 wooden pallets, and 2 plastic barrels plus decals. So that's gonna be out in April.
I wonder is there a price for that yet?
I didn't.
I'm looking on their Mini Art website right now. I'll see if we can get something for the listeners. Coming soon.
Yeah, probably won't be dreadfully expensive. They make good stuff. I don't see a price.
Or it's just an announcement at this point.
Yeah. I'm sure some of the stores may have some prices. I'm sure we can find it there. So
that's kind of
okay. Fun. Black Dog. Black Dog makes some really nice resin stuff. We've covered these guys before. These guys are from the Czech Republic. So this is a list of 10 new products. The ones for the F-15 I'm really liking, but we'll get to that in a minute. Berlin Street Base, 1/72nd scale, a brick wall in 1/72nd scale. A house corner. A little bit of wreckage there, and that is in 1/35th scale. What else do we have here? Then we have a German Luftwaffe pilot in 1/32nd.
Yep.
In his flight suit and all that.
That's a World War II era, correct? No,
that's 1940 to 45.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's let me see here. Yeah, it looks like a couple of different ones. So there's what looks like a two-pack, one with a cameraman, one with a pilot.
Yeah,
And then we have some stuff for if you have a 148 scale F-18 kit. Oh yeah, I've got a Tamiya one somewhere in the stash.
that's pretty
Not that
cool.
yeah, check this out. You got the F-15B and D. This is for the Great Wall Hobbies 48th kit, actually.
Okay,
Beautiful looking rotary cannon there with all the bits and bobs, all
that's
painted
awesome.
up. And
Wow.
then they also have the engine with the engine panel and some very
Uh-huh.
nice detail there. That looks absolutely gorgeous if you want to cut that open. Plus, then the electronics. The electronics bay is just holy cow.
Oh yeah, that's great.
For 148th,
Wow.
if you want to, yeah, that's looking
Whew.
absolutely gorgeous.
That's pretty spectacular.
That's pretty, yeah, in a
Wow.
resin and very nice detail. And then they also have the big set, which includes all three. When you really want to go whole hog on your Great Wall hobbies,
Yeah. How cool is that? That's awesome.
that looks absolutely nice. Hell of a lot of masking after the facts when you actually paint the main thing. Or you know
Yeah.
what you do for stuff like this. I was reading something the other day. What some people do is let's say for this electronic bay with the panels and that,
Yep.
what they'll do is they'll fully paint that, and then they'll close the bay and just
Yep.
use a little tiny bit of blue tack just to keep the hatch closed
Yep.
while they paint, and then
That
open it
makes
back
sense,
up
right?
again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
exactly.
sense.
I should do that for landing gear doors. You think I would do
It's an
that, but
idea. Yeah.
yeah, you know what? I still have because I haven't put the doors or the gears on the Valkyrie yet. Maybe I'll,
Try
maybe
it
I'll,
out. Yeah.
maybe
Sounds
I'll
like
try
that's the
that
way to
out.
do it. Make it
Yeah,
easy, right?
exactly. Makes sense. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that's very, very nice. Okay, and then we've got Rubicon models. We've covered Rubicon
Oh,
before.
sorry, Stu. I'm gonna
Sorry, did I
interrupt
miss
you
one?
there.
Yep.
I have something to add about Black Dog while we're on
Oh
the
yeah.
subject.
Okay.
I didn't put this in earlier, but Black Dog has a couple sets of really beautiful 35th scale Canadian Army tank crew figures, and I'm looking at Track Jam Models, which is
Mm.
another Canadian company. They're from our area, and
Yep.
obviously they're really into armor and stuff like that. And they're always up to date with all the Canadian armor stuff. And these
Right.
figures are beautiful. I was just trying to figure out what era they are, because I know I could probably use a couple. They look really modern. I'm gonna
Cool.
throw an additional link
Throw a
in
link. Throw a link in, and we'll
for
see what we can find.
yeah. I think these are a new thing, but I believe that they're actually already for sale because Track Jam's saying they're sold out of them. And
Hmm. Yeah, I'm
so
just looking
pretty cool.
at their website. You can also get a Scottish bagpiper for World War One.
Cool.
All sorts
Yeah.
of yeah, they got all sorts of cool things. I've heard I've known these guys for years, and I just love their resin sets. And
Yeah. Yeah. They
yeah,
do quality
they do some
sculpts.
really really good stuff out of there. So definitely worth checking out from them. Okay, what else are we here? Next up, Rubicon models. So as I said, Rubicon they do a lot of 28 mil or 156.
Yep.
Very popular with the wargaming crowd. But I always, their models in their own right because the details are actually gorgeous.
Yeah.
Now, again,
Good.
as I said before for my rant about different websites, they actually have two web stores. They have a British one at rubicon.co.uk and they have rubicon.com for the US ones.
Uh-huh.
I actually really like the British ones. They keep up a little bit more with what's coming new. But they have what were we talking about from them? God, did I erase
We're
the link?
talking about they are coming out with a stag hound kit,
That
which
was it.
was
Yes,
interesting, and they're also talking about or they were showing some 3D images of the Daimler Dingo
that was
Scout
it.
car, which I think
Yes.
is in English as well, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah. So that's some very nice detail. Those other ones we talked about a few months ago. They came out with a Panzer III, and there's like 28 variants you can
Okay.
do because they just added
Wow.
some different parts and all that. But
Okay.
yeah, they have a ton of stuff too. Some excellent sculpts there. And they also do stuff in pewter as well. So, for example, you've
Yeah.
got like German infantry figures and stuff like that.
Okay.
But very much in the 156. Again,
Yeah,
designing
I was
mostly for the
surprised
wargaming crowd.
when I saw those images.
Yeah,
I
they look
didn't know
good.
about the company, and I
Yeah,
just quickly, oh, that's kind of an interesting thing. I was looking at it. I had thought it was all 35th scale, and then
I know.
if
I
you go to
know.
their
Looks
website, they have a
gorgeous.
couple sort of build-up pictures, right? And it looks
Yeah,
really good. So
They're really good. And they have a lot of different stuff. So like
they do.
all World War II, but they include Russian, French scenery packs.
Yeah.
Um, so all sorts of things you really can't get anywhere else. And they'll also their web store out of England, for example, includes the perfect plastic putty, the stuff from Deluxe and
Yeah.
different manufacturers, because wargaming is quite big over there.
Yeah, I
And
guess
it's
so.
and it's the same. So yeah, 56 mils, the other, not 56, 28 mil. You'll often hear it referred to, the 156 scale,
Okay.
because it's roughly 28 mil figures, and that's a very popular wargaming size
Yeah.
that people do. It's a little bit bigger than, smaller than 72nd. Bigger than
Yes.
72nd, but smaller than 35th. So
Somewhere in the
definitely
middle
worth,
there.
yeah, definitely worth checking out. So yeah, so that's pretty cool as well. So okay,
Yeah,
where
right
are
on.
we here? I keep going
What's
back to our
next?
interview page. What's next? Oh, your stuff's next.
Oh yeah, okay.
Our good friends at Bandai. Yeah, tell
Yep.
tell us all about. I first looked at this, and I confess I didn't start scrolling. I saw the very first picture, and I kind of went, "What the
Yes.
heck is this?"
So I saw a review of this, and that's why I'm sure there's other Gundam stuff going on, and I'm not up to date on it. But I picked out the it's another P Bondi release, so the premium Bondi, which I gotta say I'm still a little confused on how that all works. I'm gonna have to maybe dig deeper and set up an interview and figure out what the deal is. But
You may have
so
you may have
this,
to talk. You may have to talk to our buddy Scott over at HobbyLink.
yeah, that he would know.
Yep.
So this is from the kit I picked out here is the high grade Universal Century 1 to 144 Primrose. And this is interesting though. It's actually called the Emergency Escape Pod Primrose. And it's a small kit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about 1,400 yen. So I'm going to say that's like a $18, $20 Canadian kit.
Very reasonable.
And yeah, but it's small.
Yeah.
It's not actually a
Okay.
full mobile suit. What it is like a little like a small spaceship,
Mm-hmm.
um like almost like a fighter style. It has like a beam cannon and a cockpit and like obviously some kind of engine thrust unit. But
Yep.
you can take this kit and take parts of it to add to other kits to come up with variants. And this is
Cool.
from the AOZ, so that's the Advance of Zeta series, which was
Okay.
a manga and like a model graphics special story and there's a whole series of kits. It's really cool. I quite like it. It fits
Mm-hmm.
before Zeta Gundam, the TV show, the sequel to the
Mm-hmm.
original Gundam TV show. So you can take if you can buy. There's a couple other kits that were other premium Bandai kits, and there were other just regular HDUC kits. And if you can combine bits and pieces of both to come up with these other versions. So there was and they're all in 1 to 144th scale. There was the full armor Hazel Ra, the Hazel Osla, the Hazel Osla plus gigantic arm unit. And I think there was two others as well. And I thought it was kind of it's a curious idea, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you buy this $20 kit roughly in your market, and then you buy another. I have the Hazel kit, and I think it was like a $25 kit or
Yeah.
so.
Right. And you
And
can buy bits and bobs and customize it the
you
way
so
you want.
you would use that mobile suit, the Hazel mobile suit, as like the base, and then
Mm-hmm.
you could for these. I'm sure these are from something. Like I'm sure they're from a manga or some kind of story, and then you could create these different variants, right? So they're all like canonical. Can I say that in canon
Mm-hmm.
variants? So it's kind of it's an interesting idea from Bondi's point of view because and I think if I'm not mistaken, there was one variant where you actually had to buy two of the Primrose kits to get enough parts plus your other base platform kit to make it a go. So kind of a wise idea on Bondi's part. And we've seen this before with who was it that came out? Was it Wingnut Wings that had they were doing every version of
Every
the
variant of the various decal schemes or whatever. Yeah.
yeah
Yep.
yeah
Of one of the German fighters. Yeah.
I think that was more of a decal
Yeah. It was
variations, right?
basically a
But
decal variant. Yeah. So this kind of, I'm just reading. So it sounds like it was originally in a hobby magazine.
yeah, so Dengeki
Danica.
Hobby.
Yeah.
is they're pretty good. They're like one of the later or newer hobby
Right.
magazines that came out after Model Graphics, and maybe they're the ones who did the Advance of Zeta storyline, and it was like
Maybe.
a model, like a pictorial story kind of thing with
Yeah.
models.
So more like a manga, like you're saying. Apparently, because
Yeah,
they came out monthly and they started in '98 and they stopped publishing in 2015.
Dengeki's gone, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
I'm just looking
interesting.
it up on Wikipedia because it says
Okay.
it mentions that Bandai's acquired the license.
Yes. So that
So,
might have been in a story.
because
Uh,
apparently the bonus kit Primrose that was released with the magazine, so it sounds like it was something that came with the magazine.
yeah, and I bet you it
And
was a really small scale, like 1 to 400 or something.
yeah, I'm not sure. It
I've seen
seems
this
to say you can
before.
have that. Yeah, that's cool.
This is the thing in the Japanese marketplace. I've never seen anywhere else where what they would do is include like a really small kit, kind of flat packed in a
Mm-hmm.
box,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be
Mm-hmm.
like bundled with a magazine. Or they have this other style where, and I remember I forget who did it. If it was, I think it was Model Graphics did an F14 D type Tomcat where you every month you got like a
Yeah.
sprue, one
Yep.
sprue, and then you had
Yep.
to collect every month, and then you'd have this kit to
There's a
build.
few
So
magazines actually that are doing that
yeah,
even now. The thing is, they
yes,
tend to be more large scale because if you add up how much the entire run
yeah,
is, yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty expensive. I think
Well,
someone's
there
doing
was
a
a
1/16 Spitfire, for example, and
okay.
it
I
works
know
out to
that.
like $2,000.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? There,
Yeah,
there is right now. There's a 1 to 20th scale VF1 Valkyrie kit that's being done the same way.
right.
Like a monthly thing, and like the first one, the first issue was like $3, but
Yeah,
every issue subsequent was like
yeah,
$25.
yeah.
But you
Well,
get this like massive Valkyrie kit,
yeah.
just monstro.
And if you like it, and if that's your thing, hey, it reminds me as well as you were talking about, some of the magazines out of England would do that. Like my wife gets the
Okay,
odd English knitting magazine, and they'll have like some pattern or some yarn.
and you get a
And I know,
portion of the pattern,
well,
right?
no,
And
you
then
get
you
the
have to
usually in that case it's the whole thing. Like I've seen in
hold the
some of
whole
the
thing. Yeah.
model railroading magazines
Okay.
out of England, sometimes they'll give you a free card pack, like flat card kit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
building or
Yeah, like a little
something.
building, and it's usually
Yeah.
complete. It's not often they'll have it in
Parted
parts.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I've seen this before. So yeah, it's a very cool concept. So you reckon there wasn't a TV or movie series? It was probably just a manga or a comic, a graphic novel.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Sentinel series where it was like they gave you a chapter of the story, and then they would
Hmm.
give you images, but the images were um, like photographed models.
Right.
So it was like a
Okay.
I don't know how to put it in better terms, and I know
Hmm.
we've talked about this with John Moscato, and like the
Yeah, I think we
Sentinel
have.
Sentinel is awesome, and it was eventually published in its own book, where you got the entire story, so you got all the text and then all the images, and there were these like scratch built, you like brand new designs of mobile suits, and they fitted into the story, so it sort of becomes canon. But
Hmm.
it's not a straight up comic book, and it's not a
Right.
video game thing, and it's there were like these beautiful, someone came up with the models, they made them, like scratch built them, and then took did all these photographs with like backgrounds and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Now it all
Right.
digitally put together,
Yep.
but certainly back in the '80s they were all kind of more
Yeah. Yeah. I think
analog
I
style.
recall these now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that's kind
Very
of
cool.
for other science fiction fans, right? The Machine and Krieger universe was that. It was like
Hmm.
made up. That was from Hobby Japan. I think that maybe that's the first example of that style where they kind of put some story detail and then all these kind of unique science fiction, models that were scratch built by was it
Right. Okay.
Yokoyama, yeah. So but these are really cool, and this Advance of Zeta has gotten a whole series of kits, and it's great. They're really cool designs. I think they're neat, and I like this Primrose. I think it's really cool by itself even. um,
Hmm. It
I don't
is. It
think
looks neat.
uh,
Once you get past the first picture, then I
yeah,
understood.
so that's what you get in the kit is the first picture, and
Right.
then
Right.
start to see later on. There's bits and pieces amalgamated with that looks like the
Yep.
Hazel kit, and there was a Hazel prototype kit and a bunch of others I forget, but Yeah, it's a great
It's
marketing
neat.
gimmick, right?
Yeah.
Like you buy
Well,
buy a bunch of these and you can slap them on different things and
and the thing I love is that I always learn so much about Japanese hobby culture. Every
it's so
week we're on the
interesting.
show. Yeah, it's from you, and I'm sure our listeners do as well. It's really
Yeah,
good. So
I hope lots of people find that stuff interesting. The thing about the Japanese world is they really love all the like they really pay equal love to the science fiction and the
mhm.
military and international
Yep,
stuff and aircraft
exactly.
and
Yeah,
I
very cool.
it's always really all appealed to me in
Yep. No, I think I've learned a lot more, and I've always bits of it have appealed to me, and it appeals to me that much more. You're gonna make me spend more money, damn it. Terrible.
you gotta buy two
Okay.
bronzes and one hazel and you come up with some
Weird
goofy
combination. I'll put Canadian
There we go.
decals on it and Captain Canuck.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna finish up our news section. What's hot at
Yeah.
Scalemates? So a lot of normal stuff, a lot of movement. The Edward 48 scale Tornado, Kitty
Yeah.
Hawk's 148 scale KA2, the Revell SR71 Blackbird. That's going to be fun when that's put
That's
together. That's going to
not
be a big kit.
that's not out yet, is it?
No,
This is
that's a
just
new tool. Actually, I'm noticing, they're saying 2020. This is what people are talking about, though, right?
yeah. Yeah.
You got to remember that. So now this one looks interesting. This one I would consider at some point. Kinect's got the Israeli version of the F-16, the Sufa, with the full
Okay.
IDF weapons pack. So that's new parts because that's got the the extra
Can't be
fuel,
that
the
old.
built-in fuel tanks and all that. No, I think it's an older mold from our friends
But
at Kinetic.
Kinect's
27.
only oh yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking back. Yeah, it's an older mold, but it's what they do with it, parts and that. It's actually a very 2008. Hang on, let me just see
Okay.
here. New parts, new parts. Yeah, so they basically come out with an Israeli version with the conformal fuel tanks and you know the Israelis
Oh,
do some neat things to aircraft. And this one I have to
yes.
admit looks pretty badass. So I
Yeah,
kind of
it's
like
wild.
I kind of like that one.
Yeah. Voted for
Um,
bear.
yeah,
Is that fuel tanks that are kind of like
yeah, conformal
along the
fuel tanks.
fuselage?
Yep,
Oh,
exactly.
okay. That's why it looks so
Those,
different.
yeah,
Wow.
that and the F-15s they did that with extends the range big time.
No kidding, eh?
Then of course we've got the Lockheed P-38 Lightning,
Beautiful.
Tamiya. The Kitty Hawk's got a UH-1B Huey.
Yeah.
What else do we have here? Of course, our monster pillbox on wheels, the FV 4005 we talked about last show from Amazing Hobby.
Oh,
The thing on Anthony's list, the 172nd scale carrier deck
I
section.
gotta track that down
You
somewhere.
got to track that down. It's coming soon.
Yes. That's
And again, it says change box, so this has been around before. We never did look it up last week, did I?
I know I've seen it.
Uh,
I think it's
yeah.
been around for a while, but
No one's updated Scalemates. It says change
yeah,
box, so I don't know. Yeah, so I'm sure it was around before. So yeah, all sorts of goodies. Again, not a lot of changes, a couple of new things. The Ryefield models T-34s, the Blackburn Buccaneer from Airfix.
yeah.
I'm just seeing what else is here. Let's see. Great Wall Hobbies coming out with a 1/72nd scale F-14A from the Black Aces. That's just changed decals. So yeah, all sorts of goodies. If you look at their what's new, I love some of this stuff because you never know what you're going to see there, right? How about the,
Sky Raider with Special Bomb.
yep.
Hasagawa won the 72nd. That's this
Someone,
year.
one of our fans at of the show recently got a new Sky Raider 148. His wife gave it to him
Oh,
with the full weapons pack. It looks like it's gonna look really nice.
oh, this is a
Um,
rebox with new parts.
yeah, okay. Well,
I
still,
wonder,
you
I
know,
don't know how far that goes back, but yeah,
let's
that's
see.
a
Yeah, so all sorts of goodies. There's certainly no shortage. I really wish there was more sci-fi because this Scalemates relies on the community to contribute stuff. So I really wish
they're
that.
all somewhere else, I think, like in terms of chat boards and
Yeah, that's
under.
fine, but it's neat to
Yeah.
see. But there is primarily a military, you know,
Yes.
planes and tanks focus. There is some ships.
Yeah. Yep. A
Oh,
Volsper
here's
MTV.
something new. Now Revell, again, the quality won't be eight AT-AT Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary, 153rd scale.
Oh
It's
goodness.
yeah, and it's a Reebok. So yeah,
Those
it'll be
those
from
kits I think
2007.
are That it's from 2007 or earlier?
Yeah, the molds 2007.
Oh wow, okay.
They've
Because I mean,
reissued it a couple of times.
there would have been kits, I'm assuming, around 1980, right? Or
Oh yeah, I
1988.
remember those. I remember I had a couple of those. I had
Yeah.
AMT did some and all that.
Yes, AMT.
So yeah, quite a few other good things. So definitely worth checking out. ScaleMates is great for this. So make sure you check out our good friends at ScaleMates. I've got to email them back. We've been hoping to get them in for an interview, and it's just a
Yep.
matter of getting a time that works for everyone.
Yep.
Again, with this coronavirus thing, it's just thrown everything for a
It
loop.
really has. And
Yeah.
we're trying to forge ahead. We've been getting some stuff done, but yeah,
Yep. We'll
certainly
just do what we
it
can.
is a bit. Yeah, it's one of those things. Everyone's dealing with a little bit of a new reality,
Hmm.
so we got to be
Exactly.
patient and keep
Exactly.
forging ahead.
Right. So moving on to what's the scoop, and this is literally just seconds before we went to air.
That's
You got
right.
a you got a text from our good friend Sean.
Yes, at Sean's Custom Model Tools.
Yeah.
So now I think in our prize pack there was a Tamiya glue holder included,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so he was, I think, at the behest of Stu, was I guess spurred on to create a version that would fit the Mr. Color or Mr. Hobby um,
Well,
bottles
yeah.
as
So
well, right?
there was a bit of a story. So what happened was Sean came
Yeah.
down to Goodman Heavy Industries with some of the stuff to show us because you had some of your super sanding blocks, and
Yes.
we had a chance to meet him and do an interview. Well, while we were there, he had the sanding thing, and I noticed you have Tamiya glue and you had some Mr. Hobby glue
Yep.
on your workbench. So I just reached over and was playing around, and I noticed one of them. You have a bunch of different ones, but one of them was just
Yes.
it would fit, but it was very tight.
So I think it just didn't
Quite.
quite fit in.
Yeah. So we
Didn't
just,
it, it sat there, but not
yeah.
enough.
So we made mention to that, and Sean says, "Well, I can look at that." And then
Yeah.
he came up with, because I was thinking first he'd come up with something separate, a whole completely separate one, but
Yeah.
then he did a thing of genius, which is why
Yes.
he does this sort of thing, and I just have a face for radio. Um, yeah, he actually took the existing Tamiya um, bottle holder. So for those who haven't seen it, and we have a picture of this thing too, but
Yeah.
it's basically a round 3D printed thing with a square
It's like a
basically
disc.
cut out the
Yeah, a
middle.
disc,
Yeah.
right, with the square insert.
And that nicely holds all the Tamiya bottles. What
Oh,
he
that's
did
amazing.
was he took a Mr. Hobby bottle, measured it off, and he rotated and put another square in at a 45-degree angle. So now
Yeah.
the same thing fits both manufacturers' bottles.
Yeah, you can just
Genius.
rotate it 45 degrees for one brand or the
Yep.
other. Because I have like for Mr. Let me just think here. For um, Mr. Hobby, I have like the decal setter.
You got a ton of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have more Tamiya. You have more than Mr. Hobby.
yeah, and I have a whole bunch of Tamiya stuff like the paint
Yeah.
retard or the glue. Obviously, is a staple. But they have the same kind of almost. They're just off by like a millimeter. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really
It's
great. So he's going to be offering his single stand is going to do double duty
right.
for all your different stuff that you have.
And
And
this is so literally hot off the press. He hasn't even updated the website yet.
yeah,
We
he
were
just sent.
talking to him via text, and he said, "Oh, he said I got these done." I said, "Well, and you asked him, can we cover
Yeah,
them?"
yeah,
So that'll be out really soon,
yeah.
and
I'm sure he'll have them up on his.
that'll be one the next time I meet in person. I'm probably
Yeah.
going to be purchasing a couple of those.
Super
Um,
handy. I gotta
yeah,
say, I love the glue holder. I did. It's one of those things I didn't realize how much I'd like it, but
yeah.
I just now I don't worry at all about knocking it over.
Well,
And
yeah, I
if
like
you
it.
don't
This,
have it, I'm always worried. Like in the back of your mind, you're always,
yeah.
oh, don't knock over the bottles.
Well, the thing with
So
me, it's funny because I always thought the Tamiya bottles are pretty stable. But one of the things I do is I have a couple of cutting boards, so I model on a slightly raised surface, and
yeah,
it just prevents me from accidentally, it's
yeah,
tougher to slide along the
yes,
bench. So I'm the same way. I always have it when I have my extra thin out or whatever, my decal
yeah,
set or whatever. So yeah,
exactly.
so yeah, definitely check that out. And we have a prize pack going out, and there'll be
Yeah,
some pictures there. And once the show circuit kicks in again, I'm sure you'll be seeing him around.
he will definitely be around. But I think you can get all of his products, and there's a few of them from his site on Facebook. So that's the place to be right now to
Yeah.
check him out. And I know he's still sending stuff out.
Yeah. And we have a link on
Yeah.
our show page. So,
Yep.
which nicely segues in to
Yes.
Goodman Models, because you actually carry one product in particular because it nicely
Yes.
matches to what Goodman Model carries.
That's right. Super sanding blocks. So I gotta say, I have a ton of stock because I was trying to gear up for. There was a whole bunch of shows I was going to be attending: Heritage Con, Mecca Showdown, Norris Con, and now that they're
Yeah.
all on pause, I have lots of stock. So certainly, I am still going to do shipping. I'm just not doing. I used to do almost next day.
Hmm.
When an order comes in, I would just do a next day ship. Right?
Yeah.
I would pop after work, and I've decided just to slow down on that. I'm going to be doing sort of every other Friday
Makes
for
sense.
yeah, just to maybe go to the post office a little less to stick with the social distancing.
Hmm.
But I am still in business, and I do have lots of stock, so grab them. I know I've been using mine like crazy lately, so I've been working on my spec build for Moscato hobby models and doing
Hmm.
working on the Quaidloon Rao kit and the M72 Gabriel, and I've been using the sanding blocks on all that resin, and
Yeah.
I've been even using it on MDF because I've been working on the base
Awesome.
that's going to hold the Quincy Row kit.
Yeah,
So
I saw that in your
yeah,
Facebook update. That
I
looked
did put a
really
little
cool.
update video, and I've been using the blocks a ton just to help me plane the edges square and
Cool.
get rid of any imperfections.
Yep.
And then when it comes down to the resin kit, they've been just unbelievably helpful. I'm sure they'll be a great asset to every model builder out there,
Hmm.
whether it's plastic or resin. But certainly on the resin, it's kind of made my life a lot easier just for getting rid of those stubs and seams and that kind
Hmm.
of thing. And then just getting it worked through quickly when it comes down to cleaning the parts up.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got some very high profile endorsements too from some of the modelers out there. We won't say their names.
Uh,
We don't want their heads to swell. But no, they're around. They've posted about it. No, you've got some
yeah.
good people. You've got good feedback from people. Yeah,
Yes.
I haven't met anyone yet who once they get it in their hands and try it out, they just love it. Like I say, it's a staple on my bench now. Anytime people see the
Excellent.
pictures, I've got it. I've got mine in its nice little stand. And again, we're talking about Sean's Hobby Tools, and you
Yeah.
have the special edition one with the
Yeah.
special color,
So
right?
so the if you want the official Goodman Green Super Stand, they're made by Sean from Sean Customs Model Tools, but that one is only available from me. And it's funny because I had asked him to make me up a batch of them,
Yeah.
and I said, "Oh well, I'll see you in a little bit. Like, just hang on to them." So he's got like a box of like 20 of these things sitting there. And obviously, when the pandemic kind of hit, we were like, "I will, or maybe I'll ship them," but I do have a few in stock. So
Yeah.
you can only get the green from goodmanmodels.com, but Sean also offers custom color choices.
Right. And you can
So
also get a
yeah,
complete set with the sanding blocks and the stand all together.
yes, I am selling that, and you actually get a discount on that.
There you go.
That's the Super Sanding Block Value Pack Combo. So
Right.
those are
Exactly.
definitely available. Uh, well, I'll tell you right now, at the very moment, I have four, four super stands, because the rest are at Sean's house. But
So,
I do have four in stock, so you can get the whole set
yeah. And we can
for a
probably make
slight discount.
arrangements if you go through the four. We'll figure out
Yeah,
something.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
have them ship me the box at some
Yeah.
point. But
I
we
think
would
that'll be
meet up
easiest.
every so often, so
Well, we were
it
planning
wasn't.
to meet up this weekend. We were going to have a
Yeah.
whole, we were going to have signs. You were going to be,
Yes.
you were going to be at FlexiFile
Yep.
with your stuff, and then we were going to have a sign pointing to Sean, and Sean was going to have a sign pointing the other way.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, and I was going to wander up to people and say, "Hey, psst, yeah, you see, you got that nice stand. You get the blocks over there."
Good
Before
salesman.
they threw me out or something. But
Yeah.
that's fine. So, where can we go to see more of all this goodness?
Yep. Check out goodmanmodels.com and feel free to order. I will get you your order out to you. And
Yep.
if you got extra model kits and you got extra bench time, and get yourself some good tools.
Exactly. So there you go. And like I said, the site looks awesome.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, exactly. Well, that's because we both worked on it, right? We did a good
That's
job.
right. That's
That's
true.
right.
It's turning out very nicely.
Yeah, it's working very well. Okay, moving on to our topic. So we've
Yeah,
actually got part one of a two-part interview, which we
two-parter.
did a little while ago, and this was really good. This is one you were looking forward to. So
Yes.
I'm gonna let you go ahead and do the intro.
Sure. Yeah. So it took me a while to track down Mr. Mike Rinaldi from Rinaldi Studio Press, and I'm sure our listeners are familiar with the Tank Art series of books and the SM series of books. So Mike is just what an interesting guy, eh? And I think everyone's going to enjoy these part one and part two when it comes out. Uh, he's one of those guys who is just an awesome guy to listen to. He's a great talker, very passionate, and super knowledgeable about
Hmm.
model making and all the subjects that he deals with. And yeah, it took me a while to kind of track him down, but he did finally get back to me, and I think we had a great discussion with him.
Hmm.
And
It was very good. And again, we went so long, we didn't realize
oh
that
yeah,
we ended up making it
a
a
two
two-part
banger.
interview.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
I'll just
he
have to go ahead.
we were talking about what did we get it? You know what? I was just thinking after we finished the interview. I forgot to ask him about oil paint rendering. So maybe there's gonna be a
We're gonna
part
have to have
three
him
in the
back.
future.
Part three. Part three.
But
So
we've
he's a
got a
really
lot.
good guy. So
Uh,
we're gonna go into part one right
yeah.
now. Welcome to the Scale Model Podcast interview. And tonight, Anthony is like the amazing guy who can come up with all these amazing guests. I don't
It's
know
a
how
little
he does it.
begging sometimes,
I know, but
pleading,
you seem to have very, very good luck.
empty promises.
Right. Well, speaking of promises, this is we've got tonight a guest that quite a few other people mentioned who we've interviewed want to see him on. So
Awesome.
I don't know if he owes them money or they owe him money or something like that. But why don't you go ahead and
All debts
introduce our
shall be
guest?
cleared.
Yes, go ahead and introduce your guest.
Thank you, guys. It's Michael Rinaldi from Rinaldi Studio Press and Tank
Yeah.
Art Books.
And
There
we are
you go.
very excited to have Mike with us.
Mhm.
This, I think I contacted Mike quite a while ago, and it just took a little bit of time for the stars to align. We got him.
Well,
He's here.
he probably said Anthony who?
Yeah.
Well, there was that. That's true.
Yeah.
And then there was the holidays, and there was
Yeah.
that problem. So it was just
No,
pushing it back till the
Yeah.
first of the new year.
No,
It's
Patient.
that's awesome.
easier.
Yeah. Good things come to those who wait. So
Well,
we're very happy to have Mike.
thank you,
here.
guys. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And I'll give you a quick intro here for all our listeners in
Mhm.
case they living under a rock and never heard of Mike Rinaldi.
Apparently.
He is the owner of Rinaldi Studio Press, and he's a former transportation designer turned professional model maker and author. He's best known for Tank Art and the SM series of books, and RSP produces books largely focused on painting and weathering miniatures in order to help fellow modelers achieve a higher level of finish in their own work. The books dive deep, we mean very deep, into the how and why of the various processes,
Right.
tools, and concepts in an effort to provide the reader with every bit of information needed to achieve their project goals. And that they do. So how are you doing tonight, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thanks for that marketing spiel I gave you there.
Yeah, it works. We're not,
It sounds worse
we
when you
happily
read it
do
out
it.
loud. I should edit
I
that
know.
out a little bit.
That's not too
That's
bad. It's good.
Yeah.
You know what we always say, the first thing is just trying to market ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's very true.
Always a challenge.
Okay, so we're just going to kick off and we'll see how we go. So I'm going to ask the first question. So how did you first get involved in scale model building?
I would say it's probably similar to a great many male model builders, I would say, is that their parents did it. My dad was a big model builder when I was growing up in the 70s. He was coming straight out of the Air Force in the Vietnam War era, and he was in the Air Force. And so we always had stacks of kits in the closet, old monogram kits and Revell kits. So I had my
Sweet.
first intro as a kid, yeah.
Nice.
And then it was the Tamiya catalogs in the 80s.
Yeah.
I came across those in the hobby shops, and those were collectibles. And I remember just really getting excited when a new one came out. And I was like, wow. And then I went to school and high school and girlfriends and all the things we get sidetracked with life, and then came back into it after college. And that's when I started to come back into it about almost 20 years ago now. Been doing this a while professionally.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That's really interesting. So I got to ask it, as we're just getting to know you here, about your transportation design background. So is that something you studied at college and then worked in
Yes, absolutely. I started off trying to go for mechanical engineering, and then when I realized that included a lot of math, and my brain doesn't like a lot of math.
Yep.
I tried to figure out how to be involved in automobile design for quite a while, and it was until connecting the dots on how to be or go to the right university here in the U.S. to learn the right things you need to learn to go into that side of the industry where you actually design the cars, how they look per se.
Yeah.
And then that was a very long journey, about 11 years of schooling for me. And I came out the back end of my mid 30s and was looking for a job. And a lot of what you see I do comes from my education that I learned at Art Center in Pasadena, California, about color theory, about graphic design, about photography. A lot of residual stuff that I learned on the side plays into the transition into what I do now.
Yeah, I wondered if that sort of informed your approach to model
absolutely.
making.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In many ways, many stuff, a lot of ways you guys may not even be aware of. Assessing product value, looking at the competitors' products and going, what are their strengths and weaknesses? And if we're going to do a relatable product, what are our strengths and weaknesses? What can we bring to the table?
Yep.
So when Tank Art came around, a lot of it was a result of reading all the scale model books from the 80s and 90s, including for Linden and Chet Payne and all those guys, including into early Miguel Mena's work and early publishings from AFE Modeler and other magazine publishers. What could I do? What could I bring to the table? So that was, a lot of it comes from my education in the design industry, automotive design industry.
That actually raises a really good point, where I don't think people sometimes realize, particularly in the industry, when manufacturers, not just books, but subjects to new molds to make and stuff like that. And I'm constantly telling people, people say, why would they come out with this instead of this? And I went, well, they probably did some studies and they think there's a market. And
market research,
and that's what it is.
That's what
I think people really forget that sometimes.
Yeah, we need a new Panther.
Well,
not coming out of the air.
It's also what sells well, right?
Yeah.
Spitfires, 109s.
They're not making that stuff up.
But also part of that, a lot of guys, that does come up almost every time a kit comes out nowadays. That conversation is, but a lot of that is the companies producing them have never had that kit in their lineup before anyway, so they don't get the dollar that Tacom gets for a Panther if they're Mang. So the Mang has to make a Panther to get the Panther dollar. And there's enough Panther dollars to go around for everybody. And that's the thing. If there's anything, so everybody out there listening in the world, in the hobby business, in the hobby, on the back end of it all, 50% of all your sales in the scale model world, in the historical miniature world, is German armor, German military, no matter what. And that's held true for 20 years for me. So, and everybody fights that argument with us. And you can make as many Shermans as you want to make, or whatever the X vehicle is that you're looking to do, aircraft, whatever it is. 50% of your market share will be German aircraft and armor. Period. End of story.
Yeah, and I always predicted. I always predicted it would be up. It would be up there, and it's kind of the same thing where we've told our audience about the whole Gundam and Mecha and stuff like that out of Japan. People don't realize how large that market is.
That's 80 billion with a B a year industry.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
We're finally getting. I think we're finally
it's
getting.
It's numbingly huge. It's like
I think our audience finally realizes that we're getting more and more people. I know people in my local club are finally starting to realize that. We're seeing it more and more, and so it's good. And and I've said this many times: the hobby's evolving; it's not dying. We're in a golden age.
For sure.
So, Mike, why do you have any insight into why the German sort of Nazi subjects sort of occupy that space and have done?
I think the easy we all have our theories. I think the easiest conversation I've had, or at least descriptive conversation, because in our age pool of people we're talking about here, it's basically the Darth Vader syndrome. It's the Empire. We all love the bad guy in that sense of they have the cool shit, and we don't have it. And so to me, it's always kind of had that. It's the dark side and the allure of that, all that part
unknown.
Of it. Yeah, and a lot of their stuff too, when you aesthetically, and I did some studies on this about 15 years ago, I did a big article with half-track design and in the Hanamag versus the US half-tracks, and why the German one is just kind of sexier looking. And I think a lot of it is the aesthetics of what the Germans were doing. Coming through the 30s, there's a lot of architectural conversation. And this relates a little bit to my design history, because I studied Ferdinand Porsche in the early works of the Germans, and they put a lot of emphasis into aesthetics in terms of the modernism movement coming out of the 30s. That actually plays into how aircraft design looked, the racing planes that turned into warplanes. Like that conversation is important, because what the Allies had to do was counteract the combatant that was coming at them, and they just basically built things to fight with, versus the Germans were coming at it from almost a a stylistic standpoint. And that plays into the mental aspects of the buyer. Like, we all kind of like that stuff. A 911 is still a very cool car. And it's just aesthetically, because it's been for 50 years the way it's been. And that's just part of that conversation, realistically. I mean, there's the sleeker, the meaner. It's an alluring thing to many young men, plays into that.
They definitely design things to have that kind of like immediate visual impact, right?
I think
like
so. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That was part, and same with the uniforms. They went all the way into their uniform design. That was actually very intentional. They went to designers that actually designed military uniforms to look a certain way, to give an impression of a certain thing. A lot of it was for intimidation and just the psychology of a lot of it. The tiger looks the way it does for a particular reason. It's a beast.
Yeah. It is. It's an absolute beast. No, and you raised some excellent points, because I have to admit I'm a fan of a classic 911, just for that reason. It's classic design, and again, they've always designed things like that well. So no, but it's interesting that the numbers so high. So okay,
but it's held steady. That the thing for me that was surprising, because I pay attention to that part of it, was in the sales conversation on product sales. The 50% margin ratio has held steady for years. It varies very little, and I would say a lot of the bigger companies probably see similar numbers to what I see between a German book. And there's a reason I started with it from a business standpoint of Tank Art 1 with German armor. That's a business conversation I had with myself, not anything to do with whether I'm a bigger fan of them or not. It has nothing to do with it. It was really just, where can I gain the sales from? And it's oftentimes and I knew that from working behind the counter at a hobby shop, plus other stuff that I'd done. And so that was very much so.
So in terms of that, because I'm finding this quite fascinating, particularly because you've worked in a hobby shop and that, we've often talked about how, for the most part, just like in model railroading, people like growing up now, they want to model quite a bit the stuff they remember. So like in the model railroad world, there's a lot more modern. Yeah. People guys getting modern engines other than the steam engines.
Sure.
Are you?
Because that's what we see today.
That's what we see today, or that's what they saw when they were growing up.
Yeah.
I've noticed if there's any decrease or in terms of an evolution away from the World War II subjects, particularly as, we hate to be morbid, as the baby boomer generation, the classic modeler generation gets a bit older. Because I'll say it myself, when I'm growing up, I built World War II in that, where now, I'm doing a lot more sci-fi, a lot more different things. I actually blame Anthony for that. That's all his fault.
I'm turning him to the dark side.
Yeah, he is.
Sure.
Do you think the industry is finding that?
Yeah, I would say realistically, in the historical miniature world of aircraft and armor, which is kind of the bulk of my business right now, what I would say realistically, from what I've seen and what a lot of guys would probably correlate, is in the modern Russian armor in particular, and some transition to modern Russian jet aircraft from the 60s and 70s through the 80s, that has come up big time, because they are starting to fill gaps in kits that we've never seen before in plastic. The popularity has proven quite true. A lot of that correlates to basically the modern wars that we've had after Vietnam, which is basically Russian armor versus, Allied armor or NATO armor, or NATO aircraft and vice versa, But they haven't changed in 50 years. We've been running F-16s for a long time now, and same with the Russians. So you'll see those as strong subjects, because anybody between 20 and 50 years old, that's the bulk of what we visually have seen through the news and through that part of it. As far as the war fighting is going, there's not much that's changed vehicle wise between the Navy ships, the aircraft. I'm outside of the Tomcat being retired, or the Phantom retiring out of service. There hasn't been a lot going on. It's the same helicopters and planes and tanks for 30, 40 years now. So that's the dominant, M1 Abrams, T-72s, the Russian collection of MiG-29s, 30s, 31s, or 29, all that stuff.
I'm even looking at, because I'm just thinking about that. How we've talked about, Anthony, how there's so many Russian support vehicles now.
There's so much Russian stuff coming on the market.
Well, and the Chinese, Trumper
they look
in particular.
Neat. Yeah,
well, they do. Yeah. They do have that kind of. There's a quality to Russian design. That's another conversation if you're going to have. If you were to study,
that's exactly what I'm
Russian design.
Yeah, based on what you're saying with the German conversation.
Absolutely.
I think we're seeing a repeat of that, where a lot of people like the Russian stuff because of the design.
And the Russians, I think fair to say that they're kind of the boogeyman of
for sure.
Generation X. And people who grew up during the Cold War era.
Absolutely. That's my era. That's what I grew up with. Yeah.
That's
books by Steve Zaloga. talking about the T-72 that we never knew existed, and here it is, and now we've seen. Now it's just like a a common car now in the world of military vehicles, and so it's the transition from those mythical Soviet armor stuff of the Cold War to today. Probably fuels a lot of the imagination of the kit sales in particular of that genre of vehicle. Those kind of things, I would say for sure. And that's, I see it on my I have a book on modern armor, and it is a very popular title, largely because of kind of just the general concept that we don't fight a lot of wars today per se, even though there's a lot of small stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, it definitely translates, especially with media and social media and all that kind of stuff. It definitely is a translation there for sure.
Makes sense. Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Anthony.
Well, I guess we're mentioning your tank art series, and they're hugely popular. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And we wanted to ask you sort of, how did you initially decide, hey, I want to, you touched on it briefly, you got to get into, you want to publish a book. You said you were looking for gaps in sort of knowledge presented and something that you thought you could market well for the community.
No, for sure.
So tell us about that sort of journey a little bit and how you got there.
I imagine there's a few guys out there listening that have known my work prior to that, and that a lot of it was in the magazine publishing world of being an author or contributor to the other scale model magazines out there. Most of it was, so my initial, I guess, foray into all of this was Missing Link's website, which is one of the major armor web forums prior to Facebook and everything opening up. A lot of the people I knew was from the collection of guys that were participating in that, and then some of them were editors / publishers, and so when my work came out on that level, they started to get the connection of, hey, can you supply us with material? Can you build a model kit? And that's typically how it happens today still, is guys see other guys work and they go, hey, can you write for me or whatever it is. And that's how I got started, Marcus Nichols and working with those types of magazines. And eventually it was, becoming familiar with Brett Green, whom you guys know. And then, Spencer Pollard, all these guys I've started to do and supply material for as they were editors. And they were like, hey, Michael, can you, and I said, sure. The problem with the side of it is in my design side of things, I went from this is kind of the 2008 market crash, at least in the U.S. And so it was really hard as a car designer or as a young car designer at that time for me to continue on in that career. It didn't really work out for me in that sense. But what was happening was I kept getting opportunities on the scale model side. Hey, and this was a hobby for me still. So, but also becoming paid for it, transitioning from just being that person into a professional level. Yeah. After all of that, you kind of get crunched into the publishing world, the magazine side of things, and there's a lot of restrictions with that. At the same time, I was also working at a West Coast hobby shop called Mission Models, which you guys probably know as Mission Models Paints today.
Yes, we do.
So that connection is where I connect all the dots for me. I'm the person that connects a lot of those dots between publishing, Mission Models, into the paint world, into the tank art world and all that stuff. And so what I started to do was look at, okay, how can I make a career out of this and actually make a living and pay the rent, like for real? Have that real honest conversation and guys understanding, how do you get $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in salary worth out of a business to actually live and work in Los Angeles, California, of all places? Which is not cheap. So
not just beer money.
Yeah, no, we're kind of like, okay, with my my ex at the time, this was becoming a career of sorts. Well, how do I do this? And that was kind of in my head. Realistic. And a friend of mine kind of connected, with some money. He said, what if we invest in you do a book? And I said, well, I have a better idea. And that's the point at which in 2012, where I said, okay, let's put this all together. And then I looked at my publishing work and I said, okay, well, what would I like to do idealistically? How would I like to present my work versus when I hand it to a magazine, they just put it in their magazine. And I was always frustrated with how many photos were in the magazine article. It's
how few or
how few? Yeah, it's just how few and how small. The size was, you can never see it. I still can't see it. Half the shit I see, I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I get mad. I was like, you can't. There's no way. And so I, an emphasis, and then taking all the design skills I had, I could do a layout, I could do photography, I could do things, and then it just kind of all fit together. And that's kind of how tank art. And the only reason it's tank art was because everybody publishing wise knew myself from all the armor models I've been doing. Because that's all I was ever asked to do was armor models. And not that I don't like everything else. It's just that's what I was doing. And so the name recognition of my name with a company and a new product, it made sense to start with tanks. And we've just had the conversation of why German. And that's why Tank Art 1 started off as German armor. And that's it. All those pieces come together when you lay it all out there to see in the puzzle. To do that, and Yeah.
I get the sense that you're a bit of you're a car guy, right? You're working in that field, and I'm assuming that
cars
you've
and
got
I design motorcycles too, believe it or not. So I did that for quite a while. Yeah.
Oh, that's really neat.
So
you must be an avid car modeler.
you would think there's two things. So the funny part of the story is I actually wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was a kid, and that never happened. So aircraft's actually my first love, and then I was a car designer. And the thing I don't like today are modern. Like I can't stand new cars. So I'm a classic car guy. But I told myself when I retire from this, I'll build the car models in for myself. Because to do a car justice for me, when I'm particular, so I become super, like we're all river counters at heart. But I mean, when you start to really put this together, there's no way I would kill myself. I get a car done once every 5 years is how, asinine it would become. So I obviously couldn't produce anything. Formula One would be if I was to do car models, Formula One, like the 80s, 90s, the old Tamiya 12 scale kits would be.
Yep, exactly.
I would love to do those
those are beautiful kits too.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
That comes from again, looking at those Tamiya catalogs in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They used to produce those amazing,
hugely influential
dioramas.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
That's the dioramas. Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you're saying.
I can't picture them, but I used to hang out in the model shop in the 80s and early 90s. I bet you I'd seen it.
Yeah, you can still find them.
Well, those were always the big boxes on the shelf above the guy. Those are the ones we couldn't actually fondle. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like we could touch the 6 the 24 scale. Yeah. And the AMT crap, but when you get to like the big dog 12 scale for whatever the money that what it was, hundreds of dollars they wanted, you never touch them. A little kid, you're like they were so untouchable. They were so like up
an
there.
air of mystique about them.
It's like the church, like everything's above you. Like you're looking up at it, and that has this whole. As a kid, you're like, there it is, the Jesus H. Christ kid of the whole world. I'm like, oh yeah, that's and it's an old Tyrrell from the 70s or, an old McLaren. And you're just like, wow, It
also kind of reminds me of the old 1/350th kits.
All the big ships.
Stuff, 16 tank. Oh, yeah. It was all the Holy Grail stuff when you were.
Yeah, the big Yamato, the big New Jersey up on the top shelf that you can never reach, all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. I finally got my hands on through an estate sale at a Missouri. And it's like, I've opened it up once and just went, because the only reason I'm one of these terribly practical people. Like I'd love some of the bigger 32nd scale, like Lancasters and that. I just know I don't have the
nowhere to put them.
Like with a ship, I think, I can find a narrow space. I bought that last year. I got an amazing deal, and I opened it up and I went, I'm gonna wait a little bit.
I've coined a new term for all these giant kits. It's monstro scale.
He's come up.
They're ginormous, and I think the impracticality of that starts to hit home after guys start to have 5, 10, 15, 30-second scale 24s. Like you start getting it, and you're like, what? Like when the Revell sub came out, the US sub came out. Like the box itself is like I can't even put it anywhere. Like just no, I'm not doing this.
It's a meter. It's like 3 feet.
Have you seen the picture making the rounds of the new big scale trumpeter Titanic? I think it is.
Oh, good lord! Was it 200 scale?
Yeah, 200 scale. So they've got the pictures been making the rounds out of I believe it's eHobbies in the UK, and they got this thing strapped on top of like a little tiny car.
My goodness!
I thought it was all bad when the HK models they started doing the bombers in 32nd scale, and we're like, and then now we got the wing nuts or whoever else is doing them, and I'm like, okay, I can't. No, and they're gorgeous, but it's like, dude, that's my whole apartment.
Where are you gonna put it? Where are you gonna put it? I know, and that's the thing. I'm horribly practical that way too.
No, it's tough.
Exactly. Okay,
there's also a practical side on as a publisher side to build and paint one of those to a level that's associated with. I just can't drop one of those out there and go, here you go, guys. It's like a 3-year project for someone like me, and that's like, there's no way. The weather a wing in 32nd scale takes me like months. It's just I can't.
I know. I perfectly understand. So just talk about the tank car books again. So you've talked about this briefly, but I'll ask the question. How do you develop the ideas and philosophies about painting that you talk about in your tank art book series?
Well, I would say, a lot of it comes from observation. I think the better modelers out there, the guys that I've always looked up to, and they've translated their work into influencing the rest of us is, being able to observe accurately what we're seeing, whether it's real life in the museums or in the photos or whatever it is, and being able to translate that. And I talk about it in the beginnings of a lot of these books in terms of what I call like scale realism and bringing whatever it is you're seeing down to the scale that you're working in. And that's a driving philosophy of mine. And everything I do, every single time I sit down at the bench, no matter what it is and I have it like just the tip of my tongue, because the moment you're out of scale with something is when this all falls apart. And a lot of guys never capture that idea yet. They're like, whether it's chipping or getting something muddy or fading off a paint, it has to be in the scale of chipping and scale. Yeah. So I've always had that kind of idea that if you can maintain a scale accuracy of whatever it is you're trying to do, the model will come out amazing in that conversation of, okay, that looks fantastic. It doesn't matter if it's a shiny car. If the shine is in scale, that doesn't look like a wet die-cast model, like it's actually gloss-coated in 24 scale version of the real thing, which is hard to do. When you think about how thin the microns of clear coats on a real car are. Like when you start having that conversation, that's when things start to really click into forcing your processes into a certain methodology per se.
Absolutely. That's I know that's been my focus, and I was really I was watching your video series with Dave Brown that we were talking about, and another masterclass that was online, and reading the Allied tank art book where you're talking about sort of telling the story through the correct scaling of all those details that kind of put together what's happening in the scene or on the model. And that's really huge.
Well, and I know you've mentioned as well when you were working on the Aliens APC.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mike several times and what you were trying to tell in the story, taking his techniques.
Yeah. So I drew a lot from your ideas when I was working on this project this past year, and really trying to not too dirty, but dirty enough in the right ways.
Right.
Trying to think logically as if it were that. Are you familiar with that vehicle from the Aliens?
Oh well, I grew up. When Bill Paxton died, man, all I can remember was him and Aliens and how he went. That's one of my favorite movies. I mean, the early part of the series of films. Yeah, no, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was trying to, what would this be like in,
Sid Mead? I think I don't know if Sid Mead designed that one, but he was a big influence on the movie itself.
I think it was Ron Cobb who actually did the vehicle design, but
he did the Sulaco, I think, right? The spaceship.
Yeah, but and some of the world building kind of background.
That's one of Aliens and Blade Runner both are such influential sci-fi movies of design, and again, it goes back to that APC is so cool looking. That flattened wedge with the big giant wheels, and that's all it was, and the little turret, and you're like, that's so awesome looking.
Oh
exactly.
It really captures.
He was very excited when he found it at the Hamilton show last year.
Complete impulse buy.
Yeah, it was. But what it was funny.
Yeah, they pop up on eBay. Well, eBay's not the same, but that kit used to pop up every now and then. I was always like, I should. And the other, I forget the name of the vehicle, but the one that's actually that they fly down into. The
actual drop ship.
That's the drop ship. That's another awesome design.
Very, 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 very cool book.
But yeah, scale realism, and to me the thing is it's even if it comes out in a tank art book that's about historical armor, the theory that finishing something to a patina, adding patina to something in a way, whatever the vehicle is, in the scale it's supposed to be in is to me the core principle. And when I look at other work, when I look around the world of what's going on, or if I'm judging something at a show, that's one of the core founding principles of whatever it is I'm trying to look at. And if the scale isn't there, doesn't match what it's supposed to be, then that's when the piece starts to fall apart. And you'll see this, and when guys think it's over weathered or whatever, it's usually because things are out of scale more than anything else.
That's exactly right. I find this problem very particular with science fiction stuff. Like it's too rusty, it's too dirty, it's too muddy. There's if a Gundam's 18 meters tall, why is there mud past like the bottom of the foot?
It was a deep swamp. I keep telling you that. It was a deep swamp.
And that's and especially in that world where the Gundam conversation in particular is difficult because it comes from an anime world, not from a realistic world, and it doesn't have a basis in film. It has a basis in basically cartoon drawing. So the weathering to put into that is in their space vehicles to start with. So few of them even shown on the ground and being, in that whole. So it's a challenge.
It does.
For sure there are, but
there's that space aspect, and
there's no frame of reference per se, and that's a tougher one for that world too.
Yeah, you really have to translate the idea of realism to this not real thing, and that's sort of my my goal with
but it's something that can be challenging for people because people are used to doing, let's say, aircraft or armor.
In the animation. You don't see it.
In their
no, you don't. And the other thing is the buyer pool, the market for those pieces, the Bandai market per se, is probably a 15-year-old to about a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Anything above that is guys like us who come from different types of scale model building.
Yes.
The guys that do the Gundams, and the reason the Bandai makes the kits the way they do, where they click together and they're perfect, and this engineering magnificent thing that Bandai has come into in the recent times is because their core buyer market are not scale modelers like we are.
Oh, absolutely. And so they're basically a toy, like a puzzle.
Yeah, but it's a really nice puzzle toy that doesn't come from the historical aspects that we all reference. It's a different, and I've had this conversation of why, like those kids don't have glue, they don't have clippers and paints and airbrushes. They've never even seen this stuff, most of them.
No.
And that's the large part of it. There's always the group of us on the fringe who play with all that stuff and have fun, but as a model builder, but their core buyer is nothing to do with that at all. So they're anime watchers, they're video game players. That's a huge part of why it's $80 billion in industry versus our industry, which is way smaller. So
and the other thing I'm thinking about, Michael, is the fact that when you're saying that, two thoughts about that. The whole, some of the other manufacturers are realizing now, like Atari and places like that, they're doing cross promotion with like World of Tanks, World of Warships and stuff.
Bandai's been doing that for 40 years.
Been doing that. The thing I'm thinking is it kind of reminds me of when I was very young, building when Matchbox came out with the kits with the colored spruce. Because all in a lot of cases,
you couldn't paint. So how do you get the camo in there? How do you get the color in there?
And it looked very good. And you're right. Another company I think that does that well, maybe a little bit more advanced, is Games Workshop, because they do have very much of a core market.
Yeah, tabletop gaming is another big conversation.
Huge, where a lot of people get into it when they're younger, and then they get out of it when they're older. And I think Games Workshop really, they've really kind of mastered that. In terms of the amount of people that come through that, give it up for a while, and then come back later.
Right.
Okay, Anthony, you got the next question.
Oh yes. Now I'm looking for some clarification here. I always understood that Tank Art was self-published, which sounds challenging. Now, can you correct us on that?
Well, it's quite simple. Rinaldi Studio Press is the publisher. And we hire out our printer services to a printer to actually manufacture the printed books. So we're actually technically the publisher with the imprint. And then we just hire our printing services out is what we do. So we don't own the press.
Yes. Okay.
Idealistically, that would be beautiful. And this would be a solid company of 50 people. And we're cranking this stuff out left and right. But that's just and the only way I could do this was in the modern conversation of we can have electronic payments now with PayPal. You can have websites easily set up that, you don't need to be a coder or a developer to do. So it actually, there's facilities for small businesses or micro businesses in the sense, but technically Rinaldi Studio Press is registered as a publisher in the US and that's so that there is an ISBN number on there and everything. And so we go through the whole process of it being registered and but we just hire our printer services out, a third party service. Same with our fulfillment. So
did you, when you were working on the book, did you, or the book series rather, were you working with the editors or other? Well,
I do everything. So what you're talking to, so what you're looking at is I'm actually up until extremely recently, I'm a one-man show. So it was in the classic. So technically when they say self-published, what that usually correlates to is print on demand. In other words, your print on demand and self-publishing tend to be, they go hand in hand a little bit. I actually print thousands of copies of the books on a web press. And so we use traditional printing methods and printing numbers, the quantities. We actually print large numbers of books. I think we're up to over 50,000 plus Tank Art books of the four sold over the years. There's a lot of reprints that have happened.
I saw that it recently was translated into Japanese and it was in a bookstore. That's really cool.
And, like the Ammo and AK guys, they do a lot of translation from their stuff too. And so I've been trying to, it's not easy to do that because the thing I've learned with translation in particular, especially at the sales numbers we're looking at and what we're trying to move is a much higher dollar product, not a $9 magazine. It's a $45+ book, is you got to have the language. Like in France, I need to have 5,000 to 10,000 customers or hopeful customers. And they only want like 500. I'm like, well, I can't afford to print yet.
It's not worth it. Yeah.
It's not worth it on a business. I mean, we can if we're bigger, but I'm a one-man show. And so I'm always restricted financially because what I'd love to do, But the Japanese approach me, and it's the model art guys, Dai Nippon, and they're a wonderful company, and they've been around forever, and everybody knows a lot of their published Japanese books. And they're great to work with. They're extremely, as you would expect, it's like working with the samurai culture. It's very formal. It's very, everything's by the book, everything's by the numbers. The conversations are extraordinarily formal language conversations, dear Mr. Rinaldi, dear that, it's okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like shooting the shit. It's of all the business conversations I have, the Japanese are very much, and it's wonderful because you know exactly what you're getting. The books that they've sent me are exactly as they said they would be, and that made it very easy for me to hand over that copyright, because that's what they do. Is it's basically I give them the files.
Like a license, right? Like for their
so they're
territory.
paying me a license fee, and they do all the work. They do all the the printing. It's their own printer. Then they have their own distribution and sales network over there. So I don't do anything other than I've made the book in English, and here's the digital files for you.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense for you. You can focus on what you do.
Yeah. No, it's one of the things I've been trying to actually expand into. I'd love to do it in as we all suspect, in Chinese and certain things, and really expand that part of the company because it's good business sense.
Yeah, in the Far East especially.
Yeah.
One of the things I remember about your books, because I've seen them in the stores and that, who came up with the idea of having the special binding that actually, because it's one of my beefs about some modeling books.
Same for me. It was exactly. Yeah. So a lot of the things you see. So the couple of the what are the qualities, the characteristics of the book itself, not the internals, not the model building itself, but the book itself. The size of it, the number one, is chopped down. It's we use 8.5 by 11 in the U.S. So and A4 is the popular size.
Yes.
I can't stand the height of when I open an A4 magazine on my desk, how much landscapes it takes up.
Yep.
So I chopped off the top
huge.
and bottom. In the graphic design sense, there's nothing there. We don't use the top and bottom of our layouts a lot anyway. It's usually the title or the page number. So the internals of the thing are the same width, but if you were to open like to my model magazine, I just chopped off 2 inches off the top and bottom, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that fits without going to. And the other problem is that when you have a landscape format book, that becomes very long when you open up, like the typical. So I try to find a size that compromise my bench, and so I'm the model builder. So, okay, what do I want? And that's kind of what the other one is, the flop. When you open a perfect bound book and then it slaps back, keeps closing on you.
Exactly.
So that was a printer. I'd gone to the printer, my original printer, and I said, hey man, this is, is there a way to get these things to stay open? And he said, oh yeah, and so I pay for a special binding, the lay flat binding. And it's as you can see, if you have a physical copy, Anthony, like when you look at it and spread it open, you will see the binding is not actually, the spine of the cover is not glued to the spine of the pages. There's a gap there, and it allows it to fold open like that and stay open.
That's interesting. I never noticed that.
And it's a polyurethane glue bind called, it's PUR is the acronym. Lay flat. Say that 3 times fast, but yeah, it's a tongue twister.
I noticed these things because I used to work in a bookshop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lay flat binding and I'm stunned that none of the other people even do this. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Well, it's not expensive. It's not like a huge cost, but
maybe it's just knowing about it.
But I think part of the thing is ultimately, you've got to remember, you're looking at Mike's doing this. He's looking at as he says, I wanted something that fits on my bench.
Yeah.
So you're going on. It's the old 80-20 rule. The majority of people are going to feel the same way.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things, like when I was younger, I never bought a lot of the reference books because they were frankly a pain in the ass to keep on your bench and stuff.
Big, heavy, hard to use.
Exactly. And we're seeing
the books for RSP. RSP, honestly, is a tool making company. That is really what the heart of what we are. We're making tools. The tools are just information. It's just so they've got to function. And that was where it all started from, was realistically, okay, how do I get this to where I'm comfortable using this on my own space? And that's the start, but also have large photos, also have enough room for, it's like the compromise across the board of all the factors I wanted everything to have, Okay. And the last part of Tank Art was, and this is the obvious one that a lot of people miss, is I speak English. I'm an American, so I'm not Spanish translating these things into this, the competitor. I'm not Japanese, or I'm not another. So internationally, English is the language of model building. If you've gone to international shows,
Sure.
That has been the savior of making this an actual viable operation, is because I'm not translating from another language into English. We're starting with English going out. That helps a lot. It does. It really does. Because a lot of people can understand it. They all learn it elsewhere. Whereas we here in Canada too, you guys You'll probably learn French up there, but realistically, Spanish and these are the only three we really deal with in North America. Whereas other countries all learn English as a second. That's a huge game changer for us.
Exactly.
So,
that's awesome.
Okay.
Helps a lot. Yeah, helps a lot.
So in terms of from start to finish, when you decide I'm going to do a book about this topic, how long does it typically take you between the time you start your research or the idea forms in your head and the time that it's available for sale, printed and available for sale?
This is a fun question because nothing's gone the way I wanted it to for the last couple of years. That's for sure. As anybody who's paid attention to me at all, you'll know the last 2 years have been miserable. Nothing is in an ideal world. 90 days is about what I'd like to see.
Wow.
And that's the SM books in particular. The Tank Art books are about 6 months, and that's starting all new work and material. The Tank Art books originally started with about 50% new and 50% previous work. And I've just because I have a large body of work, but also I could represent things a lot in my own style it just basically changes the whole conversation. But a brand new item, part of the reason SM books are created was to allow me as a single operator, sole proprietor, one man, one company, one author. What could I do to make new material? Well, it's one kit, one book, one model, one book. That was where that started from.
Okay.
That should be about 90 days of effort from my end on a new build into the book. The book's printed. It's a template format. Once I do the design of a book, it's a template. So moving forward, things become a lot easier. The printer, once they print the first one, they kind of know what they're doing. Yeah. So a lot of that goes really fast the second time.
Nice.
So I would say, ideally, I would like to see stuff in a 90 to 180 day window of when I get the kit in my hand to when it's out into your hands on your bench in a book format.
That's incredible. That really is.
You blow my mind. I'm agreeing. I
thought you were going to say it took you like 2 years to get a book out.
Well, it has, but not for reasons of anything I'm doing. So I've had just an enormous amount of hurdles to overcome with. Yeah. What happened is this is another sidebar trigger of sometimes we don't think about stuff and then things happen. So the paper and this is great because you guys are in the part of the world that this deals with. The Canadian-U.S. interaction of the tree industry and the paper industry is a big deal.
Oh, wow.
The lumber industry is huge, and paper's Brooks. And so when this all started to fall apart the last I don't know how long it's been going on, but there's kind of a tit for tat between our countries on paper in particular. Well, prices in America have gone through the roof with printers, and nobody really pays attention to this unless you're a big, large publisher. Well, I'm a little guy, so I'm the little.
You really
little.
Feel it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they got kicked in the nuts hard, and my prices went through the roof on a reprint about late 2017. And so in 2018, I'm like, I got to go look overseas, and I never really wanted to print in Asia at all. I never did. Made in the USA or in that whole conversation of that whole pride of country and all that stuff was part of what I was doing. However, I had to suck it up, and when I went overseas is when all the trouble started. So. When I want to make a book in 90 days, I'm having conversations with other countries that just, you don't get a reply, but maybe once a week sometimes, and you're dealing with this where you send an email out. It's a 17-hour time difference to begin with. If it's on a Thursday, you may not get a reply till next Tuesday because it's their Friday. They're off for it's a mess,
Yeah, frustrating.
Yeah, so it's idealistically 90 days would be if I'm hitting a 90-day window and there's and I'm doing that, then things are glorious over here, and it's just that's not the reality of the world. So I'd say 90 to 180. 3 to 6 months is realistic on a new product for me. From when I pop a kit. But I do that because it's fast. Don't get me wrong, it is. It's very fast.
But you're spending, you're focusing your time and effort on it, so that makes a lot of sense.
Well, to the end of that, and that's kind of so. A lot of guys when they look at me, they think I'm a DJ. And what I mean by this is, hey, can you build me that 30-second scale Lancaster? Actually, no, I can't. You want to know why? Because that's going to take me 5 years to build to a Rinaldi level of finish that you're all going to want to see. That doesn't crap out. So what I do build is I will build you the 70-second scale Hasegawa kit, no worries. It's still a Lancaster, and in the photos, it looks just like a Lancaster in 30-second scale. So I can cheat a lot of stuff because I'm a book publisher.
Yeah.
So, and that's what you'll see. That's what you do see from me, realistically, when guys like the Tamiya 30-second, like I'm a huge Pacific War Corsair guy. I love the early Birdcage Corsair in two colors. It was just worn to shit. The Marines had them, and they couldn't. I love that part of it. And there's certain Spitfires and certain, Focke-Wulfs, and there's certain aircraft that I love to pick and choose, but they're all these giant kits. That's a 2-foot model with a 3-foot wingspan. I'm like, are you nuts?
Yeah.
So
I'll build sort of an obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I look at the 48 scale stuff and I will say, okay, well, how can I, as a publisher, producer, reproduce that at a 30-second scale level that'll capture all the market of 70-second, 48, 30-second scale guys as a reference book on how to paint as Corsair? That would be the conversation I'll have versus do the new kit. Like, guys, I got to do the new kit. No. I stopped doing that a while ago.
Yeah, you don't need to pick up the last thing.
It's worthless.
So,
doesn't do anything for me.
I don't recall seeing a Corsair book. Is that something that maybe
No. I was as a frame of reference. I
Yeah.
actually had that. I had the model. It was one of the last ones I bought as it came out. Like, I gotta have it. I was the model builder dude. I went to the store, got it right away, and then it sat on my shelf because, you know what? That's like a beast of a kit.
It is.
And it's 4 Lancasters. Is what that is, or it's a fourth of a Lancaster. So, like, when you open that Tamiya box with Lancaster, you're like, whoa, okay. Yeah, we're not. The engine alone would take me a month to paint and weather properly and wire it up and detail it.
Well, that's the thing. Ultimately, in the end, this is what I tell people too. It's a hobby. You have to still enjoy it. You have to.
It's easy to get bogged down. If you're working at the professional level or just the amateur trying to enjoy it, it is part of the.
It happens to all of us.
One of the dogs of the hobby, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you should interview like Spencer Paul and have a conversation about the speed at which you would have to build a model and have it published.
He's on our list.
Yeah. Guys like Spencer and there's other guys out there around the world that do this and so that's the struggle of being on this side of the fence. This is not a hobby for me. This is the pure work, this pure job.
Yeah.
I mean, I love you guys, but I don't play in your world anymore. So So I have to be real careful with all that.
Well, as you can see, an absolutely awesome part 1 of that interview, and we're going to have part 2 next show, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. So another thing we're going to talk about, again, you've kind of heard this theme about COVID and stuff. Yeah. One of the things we've done in our area with our local IPMS chapter, and there's a subgroup called the Gray Butts. And this is a group that meets on the 3 Wednesdays of the month. We don't have a local IPMS meeting. Right. And it's basically a build night. A couple of guys get together, they meet at a local church in the basement, and they bring their kits and they banter for a while and do some building for a couple hours and stuff like that. Well, obviously that's on hold right now. Yep. So one of the things I did years ago with some people out of Europe and that was do virtual hangouts. So, and a lot of people are doing this now. You've probably heard of products like Zoom and Skype and stuff like that, which essentially lets you do just what Anthony and I are doing right now. Have a virtual meeting. We're doing audio only, but you can also do cameras if you have a webcam or an add-on camera or even your phone. So one of the ones I've always found really easy for people, because not everyone in our industry is tech savvy, right? I'm being polite here.
Sure.
I think I can get away with that. Yeah. So basically, we use Google Hangouts. So it's hangouts.google.com, and it will work on either your phone, your PC, or your Mac. But basically, the idea is one person starts the meeting off, and then they email the link to all the other people they want to be, or they can do it to their Facebook page or whatever. So the only requirements for it is that you need to have a Google account, so a Gmail account. They are free. Okay. If you have a iPad or a tablet or a phone, there is an app from either the Google App Store or the iTunes Store that you need to download. But then at that point, what happens is on our IPMS London group, when the gentleman in charge, Mike, on Wednesday decides to do one, he basically will start a meeting. He copies the link and then posts it to his Facebook page.
Oh, there you go.
And then other people just click and they come in the meeting. And what's great is you can see everyone through the camera and everyone can chit chat and shoot the what and
that's
all
awesome.
that. Yeah. So the other thing is my wife's knitting group does that too. She normally has 2 knitting groups a week, and that's what the ladies there are doing. So it's a really, it might be an idea to suggest. What I'm going to do is I wrote a very quick and dirty guide to using Google Hangouts and loaded it to the IPMS Facebook page, or the IPMS London Facebook page. I'm going to be sending it to IPMS Canada, but I'll also put it in our show notes. I'll make a link and I'll put the document available for download.
Why not? That's really helpful. I think it's pretty simple stuff, but I think if you're just approaching it for the first time or you're not that handy around the computer, it's great to have a little guide.
Yeah, I think the main thing that people were getting when we were doing it last week was people hadn't installed the apps on their phone. So when they're on their Facebook app and they try and go in, it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
So they need to install the apps, log in once, make sure it works.
Uh-huh.
So I know that's how quite a few, and I know a few other clubs and places are doing that as well. And it can be really helpful because it can be tough. Like we all have the jokes about modelers have been waiting for this for years. We've been training for social isolation all our lives, but
Yeah.
it does suck if you can't meet with the gang you normally meet with and all that.
Yeah.
So
And we got to
it might
be innovative, right?
yeah, it might be worth giving it a try. And who knows, maybe one evening, now we're in the East Coast of Canada, but maybe one evening I'll start one up and I'll post a link up on the Scale Model podcast page. And you
Absolutely.
can see and you can see how truly my scary basement lab is. The only thing we request is please wear pants.
Yes. Pants not optional.
Pants are not optional. But no, it's actually a lot of fun. One of the first things a lot of the guys did when we were on is everyone gave a quick tour of their workbench or, whatever. And it's usually pretty good. If you have to fire up your airbrush compressor, you'll just mute your mic. Because depending on how noisy they are, we have one guy in our group, his compressor is so quiet, you can't even hear it. It's ridiculous. That is exhaust fan. Where mine, yeah.
Yeah, you notice it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you notice it. So
that's great. I actually think this is a wonderful idea. And when you mentioned it, I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna set this up for my amps because they're the amps meetings and they've been canceled. I mean, basically, it's kind of for the next near future at this point, right? So might as well do something. So, and also we should congratulate you, Stu. You are the new president of IPMS London.
I did, yes.
We're talking about clubs.
I drew the short straw. No, I'm just kidding. No, looking forward to that. And you're the president of the local Southwestern Ontario AMPS thing. So between the pair of us, God help people in this area of the world.
I know what you're in.
So yeah, we're just promising a chicken in every pot, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, no, we've got
with an iron fist.
That's right. Well, we've got our IPMS London has its Southwestern Ontario model show in the fall, and we're still keeping our fingers crossed.
It might be cleared up by then. We'll have to see.
We hope so. If not, we'll just have to do what other people are and come up with a brand new date. But ways to virtually meet is a good idea. I noticed, and I'll mention a bit later, link of the day. We've got other people. I know Aaron Skinner from Fine Scale Modeler. He's been doing some kind of home recordings from his bench, and other people as well. So, it's basically you make something good out of it. So
make do with what you can, right?
Exactly. Okay, talking tools. We're talking circle cutters, I believe. This was your entry.
My pick? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a ratchet compass cutter made by Olfa. And Olfa makes awesome sort of cutting. Like I use the Olfa cutters at work all the time. Like
I have one of theirs. Yep.
Yeah. Heavy duty ones. But this circle cutter goes for about $10.50 Canadian. And it lets you expand outwards and kind of has like a X-Acto blade kind of cutter on it, and then just like a regular compass point. It's awesome. The only drawback is that I'm sure it was not fully intended for model building.
Right.
So your minimum radius is, I think it's 8. Is it 18 or 16?
1.6 centimeters.
Yeah, so 16 millimeters.
Yeah.
So you can do quite a bit. Like I've made masks for all kinds, anything large, no problem. And I think I've made it for certain wheels, like a wheel like cover for your wheel well. I've made some masks, but it wouldn't go smaller for like tank style, like the road wheels on armor. That's getting too small for it to handle. But for other larger stuff, very precise, really easy to use. And I know there's other versions of the same idea. And what a great tool to have in your toolbox.
Yeah.
And they range, obviously, that's a pretty reasonable price, $10 from hobbylinkjapan.com, which is where I got mine from. But I know you can find them in other places as well.
Yeah. I have the same one, and I use it for different things, for masking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go a little bit the next step, there is other companies, Mung and Display, both make ones that literally go down to like 1 millimeter.
That's
They're
amazing.
solid metal. They're very expensive, but again, it's like one of those tools, like a punch set. Once you get it, you'll have it for life. I know the treasurer of our club, Jerry. He has the Display one, and
Yes.
he swears by it. He says it's
Amazing,
just
eh?
amazing. Yeah, it's something on my list again on my one day I'd like to get.
Yep, me
Because
too.
again,
Me
for
too.
things like masking, as you say, for road wheels or, and there's a lot of people that do their own masks for roundels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool products. So yeah, you just put your Tamiya tape underneath it, put the cut in, and away you go. So definitely worth checking out. Like as we've said, there's a bunch of different price points.
Yep.
But definitely worth checking out. And if Display wants to send us a review copy or two, just feel free to reach out.
We would do a nice
We'd
job
love
on
to
that,
review.
right?
We'd love to review one for you. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
if we'd go for a prize draw anytime soon, but we'd love to do a review.
for sure. Of course.
Okay, what's on the bench? Let's start with you this week. What's on your
Sure.
bench?
Well, I did recently do a little video update on
Mm-hmm.
because I gotta say I'm not good at that stuff. I just like plug away down here. Nobody
I
knows what I'm
know,
doing. And
but that's
so
because you're doing amazing stuff.
I'm trying to think about it and show people as we go along. So, a while back, probably, I mean, people are probably a little bit aware. So, John has released from Moscato Hobby Models, came up with two kits, kind of and we just had an interview with John. He came out with the Quaidlin Row kit
Mm-hmm.
and his own creation, the M72 Gabriel heavy unit. So he sent me off a couple of these very generously to do kind of like a spec build. So he needs some built kits so he could take pictures and help promote. And I thought, okay, I would love to do that. And so I mean, I love the Quaidlin Row from Macross, and this is an unbelievable kit. So I'm really enjoying that one. And I decided to do. Of course, I had to light it. He had included translucent parts for these, like the sensor eye on it, and it has another little sensor dome. So I've been lighting it, and I'm in a weird stage where I'm trying to get it. I've started to prime it, but that's jumping ahead. I need
Mm-hmm.
to get it so that it will fit on the base and be detachable. But I also really want to have the wiring and like the battery pack and the switch in the base. And
Okay.
so I've got this base, I've got like there's a symbol, like a unit symbol for the Meltrandy, which is the alien power suit. So I've got that on there, and you're going to be able to lift it up and then get access to the battery box. So
Cool.
I've been kind of working on that, and then I got to get the wiring in place and then kind of seal it up, and then I can actually finish the priming and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been
Mm-hmm.
really spending some time on that. I did some black basing, sort of a la Dukes models on the feet, and I'm going to do a bit. I'm going to use that technique for just the rest of the armor itself.
Right.
And then I've also been working on his kit, the Gabriel, which is this really fascinating engineering marvel. It's just sort of 48 scale sort of powered armor where the pilot sits in the backpack and then is able to control this thing, and it carries a rifle and it has grenade launchers on it, and it's like a frontline weapon. So it's got these ball and socket joints that you have to they're not super robust like a toy would be, but
Okay.
it gives you, as a model kit, it lets you put it in any pose you want, and then you have to kind of cement it. So you have to pin it and glue it like once you like a static model. Once you kind
Okay.
of got what you want, so that's kind of genius, right? Because you can do that is really limitless to the model builder, but then
Mm-hmm.
it is just a regular model at the end of the day, right? So
Right.
I did have to do a little bit of tweaking to the ball and sockets to get it to kind of fit together, and then so I've just been doing that, and I've also decided that we sort of left off with the in-depth report, right? And
Right.
all about resin kit building, I'm going to pick up that series with the M72 Gabriel, and yeah, I'm going to work on the next chapter, I think, this week, and we're going to talk about cleaning the parts, and
Cool.
I'll show some pinning and which is a common technique
Yeah.
for resin kits. Yeah. So what have you been working on, Stu?
Well, I've got three on the go right now, even though I normally have two, because everything's painting mode right now. So
I'm
Yeah, pretty normal. The Hasegawa, the VF1A Valkyrie. I got the mass and return to kit form on. I've got
Excellent.
that primed, and then I'm using, and I've got to finish a review of it, the brand new Mr. Hobby Aqueous paints. So I've
Sweet.
been using the off-white, which, white's always a terrible color to paint. It's always multiple layers, light coats.
Yeah.
You gotta
Always.
take your time basically, and just
Yeah.
do very light coats. But I tell you, this Aqueous I think I've put 3 coats on the top, and I'm on my first or second on the bottom. I think it's
Yeah.
my first, and it's just going on beautifully, absolutely beautifully. It
Awesome.
actually dries to like a semi-gloss to a gloss. So
Uh-huh.
one of the things I'm thinking is when it comes time for decals, I won't have to put a gloss coat on.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with this paint. Yeah, so I'm really enjoying it. It's nice to see the kit starting to come together. I'm going to be adding, there's some decals like for the black skull and crossbones. I won't
Yep.
be putting the black background on, but I'll be painting that. So
Okay.
there's still some masking to go, but yeah, so that's coming along nicely. It's going
Wonderful.
together quite nicely. The next one is the Edouard Mark 9 Spitfire in 1/72nd scale. Again, all primed. I just using. I wish they had the color range in the Aqueous already here in Canada for the 3 REF colors. I want to use of that, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Well,
They
because it
might
just
come
means I
soon.
have to. Yep, hopefully soon. It just means I've got to add a gloss coat afterwards.
Yeah.
But no, I've got the underside, the gray underside painted on that one. So there'll be a second coat of that, and then that has to be masked in preparation for the camouflage on the top. Again, canopy's all masked and everything. And the other night when I was again in the hangout, I was waiting for those 2 things to dry. When I picked up the paint, the Aqueous paint.
Yes.
One of our local hobby stores, Neo Tokyo, he carries Bandai kits. They give a bit of a discount to IPMS members.
Yep.
And fellow IPMS London member who works there, Peter's terrible about, he makes an excellent salesman.
Yeah.
He pointed out a while ago that they have a 14,500th Bandai Star Wars destroyer from the movie Star Wars, and I'd say, I'm trying to think of the size. It's maybe, oh goodness me, 4 or 5 inches in length. But again, typical, very similar to, remember I did that Superstar Destroyer a while back?
Yeah.
Kind of similar idea, not the same scale, obviously, but very simple build. I had this thing together in about an hour. The mold quality is fantastic, Bandai. So that's going to be primed. And then another member of the club, Dave Blappy Gurton, he has some decals that he got from somewhere with different schemes. So he's going to give me one of those decal sets.
Oh, cool.
To put on. So that'll be kind of cool. So that's all waiting for paint. So yeah, I'm in kind of that painting mode, which is, again, it's a little bit of a pain for the hangouts because you're always muting your mic to paint. But I'm not going to start anything else yet. There's still a few on the shelf of shame, but there's a few possibilities. So yeah, it's nice to see it starting to come together. But as I said, I'll be finishing up the review of the Gunzi, which again, I'm very impressed with. So that's working well. We should also mention we've also got the unboxing review from Mr. Moscato. So that's done. I mentioned it to you earlier today. We're going to double check, make sure, but that's going to come out this week as well.
Awesome.
So we're going to release that for everyone, and that was a great kit. As you mentioned, we really thank John at Moscato for providing that with us. Absolutely. Okay. So, sites and tips. So again, as I was alluding to before, former guest of our show, Jim, at a Scale Canadian, him, like a few other hobby guys, are coming out with their own little YouTube vlogs or whatever you want to call it. So Jim's calling his a Scale Canadian TV. So he's up to 3 episodes now. It's basically just him in front of his camera as he rambles away. Not rambles, he knows I jest, but he talks about what he's been working on, and he did mention modeling fluid, like our good friend Dave at Model Mojo. So yeah, worth checking out. He's got some interesting thoughts on things, and again, he's not the only one. There seems to be a hashtag going around. I have to look into this, called hashtag Modeler Broadcasting Network. So I think a few people have been kind of doing this in these times. So definitely worth checking out. I'm going to see if there's anything, anyone else doing it. I know he's also posted some links to his local modeling group and, Northwest Scale Modelers and stuff like that.
Yes.
But hopefully some other people will do the same thing. There's a lot going on. So
yeah, we just got to do our best to stay connected, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, you always find something new you learn and stuff like that from these links. So yeah, check out that one as a start, and we'll go from there. All right. Well, I think we are done for another week.
Yes, sir.
So as always, don't forget to subscribe and let us know if you have any comments or suggestions at scalemodelpodcast@gmail.com. We currently record bi-weekly. Who knows? That may change. We'll see.
Yeah.
And it's available. Depends how much time we have. We're having so much fun on the bench, right? It's available where your favorite podcasts are found, including iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher, as well as our website at scalemodelpodcast.com. We do ask, if you enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving it a review, because when you leave a great review, it does get our show out to more modelers or people who might be interested. We also publish extra video content and complete episodes on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, we have a Facebook page at facebook.com/scale model podcast. And we also have a Patreon page at www.patreon.com/scale model podcast. I also want to give a shout out to two other great podcasts. That's namely On the Bench from our good friends down in Australia. They're going now to a weekly model. And as we alluded to at the top, all three of them are back together. You know what? I'll tell you a reason they do all hang out. I'll tell you a reason. Dave's wife is apparently a fantastic cook.
Yeah, they get meals every time.
They get meals every time. These guys are terribly spoiled from Dave's wonderful wife. And then, of course, we have Mike and Dave at Scale Model Mojo.
Yes.
Way down Kentucky way, where they feature the modeling fluid of the week.
Yep.
And I just finished listening to their latest episode. I believe it was episode 8. And they talked about photo etch.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that one. I did finally start their series, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, they had some great tips this week about some great tips for photo etch. And it might actually get me to do some more again. So definitely check them out. And they're making rumblings about going weekly as well. So anyway, that's it for this time. So as always, for the Scale Model Podcast, my name is Stuart Clark.
And I'm Anthony Goodman.
Thank you, and be well.